Chapter 16:15. Inside the shrine, got it. Ancient god Azurwood's gaze was sharp. It's slowing down. No, it should be said that the pressure is getting stronger, ancient god Whalton said. That's normal. It's impossible for there to be no resistance after the 5,000th step. Ancient god Yin Yao frowned, his eyes turning cold as he snorted. I don't know what kind of luck this brat has, but he must have made some gains while he was gone. Otherwise, how could he have climbed nearly 200 steps? His eyes shone with a sharp light that was mixed with envy and greed. Earth looked over and smiled. What? Have you become suspicious? Ancient god Yin Yao's expression did not change as he coldly said, The Pangu staircase is a treasure left to our ancient race by our ancestors. Earlier, I was opposed to this child entering the Pangu staircase, but now that he has reached the legendary 5,000th step, he must have made a great harvest while he was gone. It could be a heaven-defying treasure or some mysterious technique. This is an item of our ancient race, so how could it be obtained by a trifling human? His voice was lofty and unrestrained, and he was using the banner of his race. Ancient god, Yin Yao did not feel the slightest bit embarrassed. Mother Earth shook her head and retorted, The Pangu staircase has been in the ancient realm of the gods for countless years, but no one has ever discovered its secrets. Lin Feng was able to obtain it because of his luck or because of the mysterious guidance of our ancestor. How can we spy on him? What luck? Ancient god, Yin Yao sneered. Each generation of our ancient race is stronger than the last. In this generation, Gu Sheng reached the 4,000 step at such a young age, and in the future, breaking through to the 5,000 step will be as easy as flipping his hand. Even if Gu Sheng is unable to do so in the next generation and the one after that, there will always be heaven-defying geniuses who can reach the 5,000th step. This so-called luck is nothing, twisting words and forcing logic. Mother Earth shook her head. Is that so? Ancient god Yin Yao's gaze swept over the ancient gods, and his eyes shone brightly. Ask the other ancient gods if they are willing to give the item left behind by our ancestor to a human. To prove that I am not acting out of selfishness, as long as the votes are tied, you could treat my words as nonsense. Ancient god Yin Yao's lips curled into a cold smile. He was clearly very confident. The ancient gods that were swept by his gaze did not say a word. Their faces were filled with hesitation, and they found it difficult to speak, except for Gu Sheng. Master, how can you say that? Gu Sheng frowned and was about to speak when he was interrupted by his father. The temple lord, Gu Zheng, had a solemn expression. He looked at the screen of light and said calmly, There's no need to argue. We can discuss this later. Let's continue watching. The ancient gods nodded and followed Gu Zheng's gaze to the screen of light. Their eyes flickered with astonishment. At this moment, Lin Feng was getting closer and closer to the 5,200th level. Everyone's attention was drawn to him. Gu Sheng looked at her father, but she could not see any emotions or thoughts from his expression. She pursed her lips and looked at the screen of light again. She felt an inexplicable sense of confusion. 117 floors. 5,118 floors. 5,119 floors. Lin Feng felt a heavy pressure on his body. It was a kind of external restraint, a kind of cage on his body. It was like climbing a high mountain cliff and using all his strength to stretch his arm to reach the edge of the cliff. The key factor was very simple, whether he could reach it or not. Only one step left. Lin Feng clenched his teeth and trembled as he took the last and most crucial step. He screamed in his heart. His body seemed to be out of control, and the power of the world surged out. Lin Feng's eyes were bloodshot, and his powerful willpower squeezed out every bit of strength in his body as he climbed the last step. Bang! His head shook and his heart trembled. In an instant, the pressure of the cage disappeared, and the world around him changed. A powerful and oppressive energy surrounded him. His surroundings were illusory and empty. With his step, he entered the mysterious space once again, and countless information was poured into his mind. Along with the information, There were lines, space, and a human figure. It was barehanded. It was the figure of a warrior. He was not very strong, but his body emitted a powerful force. His entire body was one with the world, as if he was a part of the world. Just by looking at him from afar, he could feel the surging power of the world and aura. Was it Pangu? Lin Feng did not know, and he could not tell at all. The only thing he knew was that the illusory figure moved in an instant. The power of the world was incomparably familiar. It was the mental cultivation method of the Pangu method. It was not complicated, and his meridians were clearly visible. The way the energy flowed was normal at first, but in an instant, it became extremely complicated. Whoosh, whoosh. The lines changed, and the route changed. It was as if countless lines intersected, forming an extremely complicated picture. Lin Feng opened his eyes wide as he felt the strange power of the world intersecting. He felt the terrifying energy contained in the picture. He could not believe that such a simple change could cause his entire heart to tremble and his entire body to change. From top to bottom, 7 light spots appeared. Thousands of tiny light spots flickered, forming the meridians of his entire body. Boom! He punched out, and it was earth-shattering. The destructive punch was just the power of the fist. It was just the gathering of the power of the world. There was no mysterious enhancement. The 7 light spots merged into one, and the power instantly increased explosively. The terrifying power seemed to be able to destroy a planet. Lin Feng felt suffocated. Too strong. Too terrifying. It was far beyond his imagination. Wah! The picture in front of him disappeared, and information flowed into his mind. With the help of the picture, his previous memories, and the feeling of the power of the world, Lin Feng instantly understood the content. The so-called good stuff on the 5,200th floor. 7-inch fist, Lin Feng muttered. It was not a real fist technique, but a technique to use power. By using the power of the world correctly, one could use the power of the body to its limit. The 7-inch fist was divided into 7 levels. Every level could increase the power of the body by 1 level. With the help of the power of the world, the power of the 7-inch fist could be unleashed to its limit. The power of the constellation has its mysteries. The power of the world can also unleash its mysteries, but there are obviously abilities that are more suitable for unleashing the power of the world. The 7-inch fist is one of them. Lin Feng nodded. Although the cultivation of the 7-inch fist was very complicated, if one could cultivate the 7-inch fist to its limit, its power would be beyond imagination. The 7 light spots from before were actually the embodiment of the soul. The 7 souls combined into one was the foundation of cultivating the 7-inch fist. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long sigh, and his eyes narrowed. After absorbing all the information, he finally understood the meaning of the existence of the first 5,000 floors of the Pangu stairs. Willpower was extremely important to martial artists who cultivated the body Tao. Chapter 16:16. Willpower was an invisible form of energy. However, it could affect and control every part of the body, including the soul, the body, and every inch of the meridians, limbs, and senses. It was like a high and mighty marshal overseeing the entire situation. It was based on oneself and was an existence that truly had absolute control over everything. Warriors had their own natal constellations, so they could absorb and use the energy of the stars easily. This was because the energy of the stars had already fused with the body and was considered an original existence. Therefore, even if one's willpower was not strong, it would not be affected by the energy of the stars. Moreover, as one's strength increased, their willpower would naturally increase, allowing the body to contain more energy of the stars. However, the world energy was different. It was a tyrannical external energy that did not belong to any attribute and existed in the entire starry sky world. Simply put, it was a level higher than the energy of a constellation. Furthermore, without the assistance of the natal constellation, the willpower, as the commander of the entire body, must have the strength to truly suppress the world energy. Otherwise, if it was light, the meridians would rupture and the world energy would go out of control and create a huge destructive force. If it was heavy, the person would die. Everything had two extremes. When one had a strong ability, one would naturally have a stronger need. Directly speaking, to cultivate the first level of the Pangu technique, one must have a willpower that surpasses the Saint Ruler realm. Lin Feng pondered. At this moment, he clearly understood why Pangu had set up the first 5,000 steps of the Pangu staircase. Rather than calling it a test and tempering, it was more appropriate to call it protection. It was well thought out. I'm afraid that no one in the entire ancient race will be able to pass the Pangu staircase. Lin Feng smiled. The willpower required to pass the Pangu staircase should have reached the limit of a reserve galactic warrior. It was not just at the level of a galactic warrior, but he felt that it should be at the level of an intermediate galactic warrior. Even if the ancient race had peerless talent, it was only in terms of soul attainments. The strength of a heavenly deity had nothing to do with willpower. In fact, in terms of willpower, a heaven warrior should be stronger than a heavenly deity. Close combat warriors usually had a stronger fighting spirit, perseverance, and determination. Even if the aboriginals had such geniuses who were born with tyrannical willpower or who had honed their willpower, it was already heaven-defying for them to possess the willpower of an elementary starry sky metahuman when they were preparing to become a starry sky metahuman. To reach the intermediate starry sky metahuman level was indeed too difficult. The cultivation of the Heart Sutra is still considered normal. It doesn't require much willpower, but the 7-inch fist is completely different. Lin Feng nodded to himself. Cultivation was simply to control the power of the world, absorb, refine, fuse it into the skin and internal organs, strengthen the meridians and bones, and so on. However, the 7-inch fist was a move that could truly unleash the power of the world. With the meridians as the foundation and the 7 souls as the foundation, the circulation of the power of the world was extremely complicated. If one did not have a strong willpower to control it, they would probably hurt themselves before injuring the enemy. Although it's only the 7th level, according to the information, I can cultivate the first level of the Pangu technique and the 3rd level of the 7-inch fist. The 4th and 5th levels can only be cultivated when one's strength reaches the 2nd level of the Pangu technique. The 6th and 7th levels can only be cultivated when one's strength reaches the 3rd level of the Pangu technique. According to my estimation, other than the amount of power of the world that can be used, it should also be related to the strength of one's willpower. Otherwise, even if one can't unleash its full power, it shouldn't be a problem to cultivate it. Lin Feng nodded. The information in his mind was categorized and comprehended clearly and directly. Those meridian diagrams and the law of operation were like a vast ocean. It was naturally impossible to comprehend them in a short period of time. Fortunately, this information was directly memorized, so there was no need to worry about forgetting it. It wouldn't be too late to slowly cultivate it after leaving this place. Exhaling softly, the restraints on his body gradually disappeared. His tensed willpower also relaxed. Reaching the 5,200 step and obtaining the first good thing that Senior Pangu had left for him was already a bountiful harvest. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to reach the 5,400 step of the Pangu staircase. There was no point in trying. It was better to stop while he was ahead. This Pangu staircase should be a test given to me by the ancient race, right? Lin Feng smiled calmly. Looking at it from another perspective, it was clear, given the prideful nature of the ancient race, even if they wanted to lower their heads and have a talk with him, they would definitely test whether he was qualified or not. Thus, the Pangu staircase became their so-called touchstone for him. Who would have thought that it would actually help him? Otherwise, just by relying on the first level of the Pangu technique displayed by the Pangu pupil, cultivating the power of the world wouldn't be of much help. But now, it was as if a martial artist had grasped the true technique to unleash his power. Many thanks. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. His surroundings suddenly changed, and he returned to the Panga's staircase. It's also time to talk about the matter of an alliance. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Although he didn't obtain the group attack technique that he wanted the most, the increase in the absolute strength of his doppelganger was even better. The stronger he was, the more confidence he would have. Shrine. The ancient gods all opened their eyes wide, holding their breaths as they waited. Because Lin Feng had disappeared once again. The 5,000 step, the 5,200 step. Was there a connection between them? The ancient gods couldn't figure it out, no matter how hard they racked their brains. But reality was reality. They had clearly seen Lin Feng's disappearance. Every time, it seemed as if Lin Feng had used his full strength. It could be said that he had reached his limit. But strangely, he would suddenly disappear and then suddenly reappear. He was like a phoenix that had been reborn from the ashes. Not only did he recover to his peak, his strength even rose to another level. However, this time, the ancient gods didn't make a fuss about Lin Feng's disappearance. Unfamiliar the first time, familiar the second time. Phew, it seems that this Panga's staircase is hiding quite a few secrets. Ancient God Bai Yan's gaze was sharp, and he seemed to have other thoughts. Indeed, we have been guarding a treasure trove, but have never seriously explored it. How laughable. Shrine Master Gu Zheng's gaze was profound, and his voice contained a hint of self-mockery. With his strength, he naturally knew the secrets of the first 5,000 steps of the Panga staircase. However, the illusory willpower was of little help to his strength, and it only increased his resistance to illusions. But the ancients were naturally talented, and their Tao of the soul was extremely tyrannical. It was already pretty good that others didn't fall for their illusions, so when would it ever be their turn? Thus, Gu Zheng had never paid much attention to the tempering of his willpower or the increase of his cultivation. The same was true for the previous shrine masters. Moreover, the Panga staircase had a total of 10,000 steps. It was truly too high. When the target of the challenge was at an unreachable height, it didn't necessarily arouse one's fighting spirit. Sometimes, it would even make one feel dispirited and powerless. If the Panga staircase only had 5,000 steps, the secret of the 5,000 steps would have been uncovered long ago. That was the case for that senior of the ancients who had created the miracle in the past. If he was truly willing to temper his willpower, then with his extraordinary talent, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to reach the 5,000 step after spending some time. This is what it means to be lucky. Mother Earth sighed. Lucky people, opportunities, and fate. Many things seem to pass by casually. Those who obtained lucky chances were usually the minority of the minority. No matter what, this brat's ability is truly extraordinary. He possesses half of the bloodline of the ancients. From a certain perspective, he can be considered a member of the ancients. Ancient God Goldslaughter nodded with a smile. He indeed had a somewhat favorable impression of Lin Feng. It wasn't just because of his close relationship with ancient God Wu Feng, but also because of his talent in the Tao of Metal. Lin Feng's clone also had traces of cultivating the Tao of Metal. Thus, ancient God Goldslaughter didn't dislike Lin Feng. In fact, he liked him. How pure is the bloodline of the ancients? How can we allow this lowly human to sully it? Shrine Master raised his thick eyebrows and spoke in a heavy tone. Mother Earth frowned. There's no need to be so absolute in everything. Although the human's talent is inferior to that of the ancients, they still have the bloodline of our ancestors. There should be no distinction between nobility and lowly. Besides, we are in a dire situation right now. Between the purity of the bloodline and the safety of the ancients, which is more important? Mother Earth's words are reasonable. Ancient God Goldslaughter nodded. Moreover, Lin Feng and Wu Feng's daughter, Huang Yin, have become even closer. If we really calculate, the daughter they have will have 3/4 of the bloodline of the ancients. Enough. There is no need to speak any further. Shrine Master raised his head and coldly shouted, his cold gaze sweeping over the ancient gods. I, Gu Zheng, bear the name of Shrine Master. 1 is 1, 2 is 2. Lin Feng's bloodline is a fact. and it is also a fact that he is not a member of our race. There is no need for anyone to claim kinship with him. It will only make the ancients seem to be full of flatterers. His words were filled with a hint of mockery, causing ancient god Goldslaughter's face to turn green and become extremely unsightly. What you say is reasonable. Ancient god Bai Yao's eyes were cold and sharp. Today we are representing the entire ancient race, while Lin Feng is representing the entire human race. Before we decide whether to form an alliance, I hope that everyone can understand this matter clearly and not let his performance on the Panga staircase affect your judgment. The ancient gods began to talk amongst themselves, all of them deep in thought. Indeed, it was just as ancient god Bai Yao had said. Lin Feng's heaven-defying performance on the Panga staircase had somewhat shaken their minds. Gu Sheng felt like an outsider to the discussion. He looked at his master and father, but he was stuck in the middle, and he couldn't help but sigh. From his standpoint, he truly didn't care too much about social class or race. Instead, he believed that strength was the most important thing, and Lin Feng had truly won him over. Pursing his lips and hesitating, Gu Sheng subconsciously looked at the screen of light. Suddenly, Lin Feng's figure suddenly appeared, causing Gu Sheng's eyes to light up. Just as he was about to speak, Lin Feng's figure vanished once more. Gu Sheng's mouth fell open as he watched the figure disappear once more. This time, however, he felt very different. Whoosh! Gu Sheng suddenly turned his head and looked at the entrance of Shrine Master. A dazzling light flashed past, attracting the gazes of all the ancient gods. A black figure instantly appeared in Shrine Master. Lin Feng had arrived. Chapter 16-17. The entire temple was silent. The atmosphere seemed to have frozen at that moment. Even though they had previously looked down on Lin Feng and regarded him as a mere human, they had now witnessed the power of the ancient gods. After witnessing Lin Feng's strength and the miracles he had created, such as breaking through the 5,000 step of the Panga staircase, as well as all sorts of unimaginable scenes, they had unknowingly, Lin Feng's image in the hearts of the ancient gods had completely changed. Previously, when Lin Feng had come alone, they had felt that it was a trap. Even Shun and Qian Lian Huang had been a little worried. However, at that moment, Lin Feng's arrival had instantly suppressed all the ancient gods, including the temple master, Gu Zheng. He was not alone in a group of enemies. Instead, it was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. Lin Feng greets the seniors. After bowing slightly, Lin Feng smiled calmly. He did not show the slightest bit of restraint, nor did he show any sense of inferiority. The so-called difference in seniority could be simply described with one word, and that was strength. With enough strength, no matter what you said, others would be wary of you and would not dare to slight you. Similarly, without strength, no matter how imposing your words and actions were, you would be nothing more than a fox using the tiger's might to intimidate others. I've been waiting for you for a long time, Brother Lin. On the contrary, Gu Sheng smiled slightly and went forward to welcome him. He did not show the slightest bit of restraint. At that moment, he did not see Lin Feng as an enemy. Instead, he saw him as a friend, a confidant, and a distant goal on his path of cultivation. Naturally, he would not have any gap between them. However, the other ancient gods, even ancient god Jin Lu and Mother Earth, who supported Lin Feng, did not show any signs of closeness. After all, the difference between the races was a line that was forcefully drawn between them. Ancient god Ming Yao was not crude. Today, they were not representing themselves, but the entire ancient race. Little brother, you have come from afar. You have worked hard. The temple master put on a fake smile and stretched out his hand. Please take a seat. Lin Feng's eyes flickered and he smiled. It seemed friendly, but in fact, the temple master was trying to lower his title. Today, he represented the human race, so the temple master should call him human emperor, or at least domain master. However, at the very least, it was better than calling him by his name. If he directly called him Lin Feng, it would show that they were not familiar with each other, and the possibility of them being allies was not high. By calling him little brother, he wanted to suppress him. In fact, the Hall Master of Deities was afraid of him. He didn't want to lose face and pride, but he also didn't want to offend him. It's not an easy task to have the prideful ancient race lower their heads. Lin Feng chuckled as he walked towards his seat. He sat down and calculated in his heart. He had already guessed that today's negotiations would not be much easier than he had imagined. However, when he looked at the faces of the ancient gods, he found that although they were all calm and solemn, he didn't see any of that prideful expression, which was rather surprising. When his gaze fell on the massive screen of light, Lin Feng instantly understood and smiled. So that's how it was. After some polite greetings, the ancient gods took their seats. Although this was the first time they had met, Lin Feng had done his homework, especially from the intelligence provided by Gu Sheng and his grandfather. He knew the attitude of the 6 ancient gods toward him. But even if he didn't know it before, he knew it now. Just from the way the ancient gods looked at him, he could tell a thing or two. Ancient God Golden Slaughter and God Mother Earth had the calmest and friendliest gazes. Ancient God Jingyan's gaze was very complicated. Ancient God Whale Tun's gaze was somewhat satisfied, but also somewhat hesitant. Ancient God Azure would frown slightly and didn't look at him, as if he was thinking about something and hadn't made up his mind yet. As for the ones who were most hostile towards him, it was Ancient God Yin Yao and the Temple Master, Gu Zheng. He seemed friendly, but Temple Master Gu Zheng rejected him from the bottom of his heart. This feeling was extremely clear. But Lin Feng didn't care too much, even temporarily forgetting about his hatred. As the Temple Master, he shouldered the great responsibility of the ancient race. Gu Zheng naturally had the responsibility of supporting the ancient race and protecting its bloodline. From his standpoint, he was hostile to Lin Feng, even separating his parents when Lin Feng was young and hunting him down several times. These were all things he should and had to do. In the past, Lin Feng couldn't understand it, but after becoming the master of the southern region and the human emperor, he understood. There were many things that were beyond one's control. It didn't matter if he blamed him or not. In truth, Lin Feng hated Temple Master Gu Zheng to the core, even wanting nothing more than to kill him and end it all. But he was Gu Sheng's father, a powerful figure of the ancient race. Killing him was the same as making an enemy of the ancient race, so Lin Feng naturally couldn't do such a thing. When he thought of this, Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. "Little brother, what are you thinking of that is so funny?" Temple Master Gu Zheng asked. Lin Feng looked over and smiled faintly. "I'm thinking of the Temple Master's pursuit of me." As soon as he said this, the expressions of the ancient gods changed. Temple Master Gu Zheng was completely stunned. He didn't expect Lin Feng to bring up old scores the moment he arrived. He opened his mouth slightly, not knowing what to say. Talk about this during a negotiation? Did he want to form an alliance or settle old scores? It's just some old matters. Lin Feng smiled faintly, and a glint flashed in his eyes. He deliberately brought up this matter to test the attitude of the ancient gods of the ancient race, and it seemed that it was as he expected. His actions on the Pangu staircase were seen by the ancient gods. "Ah, yes. Gu Zheng laughed awkwardly, trying to ease the atmosphere. The ancient gods all agreed. There's no such thing as an eternal alliance, only eternal benefits. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he got straight to the point. "I'm sure everyone knows why I've come. The demonic beast race is on a rampage, sweeping through the entire inland region. The northeastern and northwestern regions are in danger, and the ancient race alone won't be able to hold them off." "How could that be? We have the sorcerer race as our backing, so what do we have to fear?" Ancient God Bai Yin raised his head and smiled. Lin Feng glanced at him and calmly said, "If the sorcerer race was really willing to help, I trust that none of you would have invited me to the divine realm, right? There's no need to talk about this. It's just a waste of time." From the very start, Lin Feng knew that this negotiation would not be easy. Since that was the case, he might as well treat it like a battle, simple, direct, and crude. If it worked, it worked. If it didn't work, forget it. The ancient race's situation was far worse than the human race's. Ancient God Bai Yan's face turned ashen, and he was instantly at a loss for words. Divine Hall Master Gu Zheng's eyes blazed, and he nodded. That's right. We all know each other's backgrounds, so there's no need to say any more meaningless words. He coldly stared at Lin Feng and sternly said, very simply, I'll ask you one question. You, in a human race, on what basis can you ally with the ancient race? Chapter 16:18. It was very direct. However, it cut to the chase. Indeed, benefits were the most important thing to the ancient race. In fact, if Lin Feng had not moved the ancient gods with his performance on the Panga staircase, the alliance negotiations would have been nothing more than a show. To change the arrogant and stubborn ancient race's mind, it was too difficult, especially when the temple master, Gu Zheng, objected. Although the ancient gods and the temple master had the same status in the ancient race, they would still give the temple master some face. After all, the temple master was in charge of great power. He was like an octopus that involved the various ancient regions. Hence, the temple master was the one who handled all external affairs. This was already the norm in the ancient race. Unless they were faced with an important decision, they would gather the ancient gods to discuss and vote. However, the ancient gods, who had always been aloof from worldly affairs, would generally follow the temple master's opinion. After all, the ancient gods did not wish to be involved in worldly affairs. Furthermore, they had been separated from the outside world for a long time. At that moment, Gu Zheng's words had proven his status. Hua! As their eyes met, Lin Feng instantly understood many things. His eyes gradually shone with a bright light. It was not easy to convince the temple master in front of him. However, he had to give it a try. It's simple. Lin Feng focused and said seriously, for words advance and retreat together. There was a sonorous and natural sound. Lin Feng's words were like a sharp blade that slashed down. There was no hesitation, and he was decisive. Hearing this answer, the ancient gods could not help but be stunned. On the other hand, Gu Zheng's eyes flashed with a complicated look. His expression was solemn. The answer was very simple, but it was back to the basics. It was like a master swordsman who had mastered his swordsmanship and turned the complicated into simple. Alliance? What did this word represent? What did it mean? Just as Lin Feng said, it was to advance and retreat together, to become a true whole. If they wanted to win, they would win together. If they wanted to lose, they would lose together. However, it was easier said than done to achieve advance and retreat together. Not to mention other things, just the large demon race alone could not do it, let alone the two scattered races. Why? Very simple. Because of selfishness. Who didn't have selfish motives? The ancient race had their own selfish motives, the human race had their own selfish motives, and the sorcerer race had their own selfish motives. The sorcerer race had their own selfish motives, and even the weakest martial artists had their own selfish motives. As long as one was human, who wouldn't be selfish? It's just that some people are more selfish and think about themselves. Some people had greater selfishness and considered the entire race. Those without selfishness were not humans, but saints. They had long since lost their desires and were detached from worldly affairs. Ha ha ha! Gu Zheng suddenly laughed heartily. His smile carried some vicissitudes of life, and even some hatred and anger. What bullshit is this about advancing and retreating together? Back then, which Emperor Jiang made a solemn vow, making a promise. What was the result? You treat us aboriginals like weeds. If you can make use of us, you use us with all your might. When you have no use for us, you cruelly abandon us. That's right. Ancient god Jing Ying was also enraged. During the Great Shaman Demon War, the shaman race became even more aggressive and treated us ancient races as pawns. Even the southern region was completely destroyed by the monster race. Our Gu clan is facing a great crisis, yet we haven't received even half a reply from them. Alliance? Alliance my ass. The veins on ancient god Jing Ying's forehead bulged as he exploded with rage. Well said. Those who are not of our race must have different intentions. Ancient God Yin sharply shouted, his eyes cold. In a flash, furious roars resounded through the area. The ancient gods had been suppressing their emotions all this time, and they began to denounce the shaman race. On the other hand, Lin Feng indifferently watched this scene and did not interrupt. His eyes twinkled as he looked at the ancient gods. When he saw their emotional fluctuations and their true feelings, his heart began to ripple and his body began to thump. When he looked at the current state of the ancient race, he felt like he was looking at the future of humanity. The conduct of the shaman race was truly excessive. He had participated in the Third Great Shaman-Demon War and naturally understood that the ancient race was no fool. How could they possibly feel comfortable being ordered around by the shaman race? But in truth, their outburst of emotions was not a bad thing for him. On the contrary, it was a good thing. It proved that they had long since lost all hope in the shaman race and could no longer tolerate it. It also proved that the ancient race were not traitors. Their pride and unyielding character made them place a great deal of importance on promises. It was rather good. The master of Divine Hall, Gu Zheng, did not reprimand, nor did he stop the ancient gods from exploding. He only stood there calmly and looked at Lin Feng with a pair of deep eyes. It was as if he was asking Lin Feng, "Did you see that? Your so-called reason is a fart." The ancient race will no longer believe in any promises or alliances. Let me ask you, are we humans the same as the shaman race? Lin Feng finally spoke. His voice was calm, but it was like a gentle breeze that caused the ancient gods to calm down. Lin Feng swept his gaze across the crowd and said indifferently, "Let me ask you again, have we humans ever betrayed the ancient race or betrayed any alliances?" His indifferent voice was like a heavy hammer that struck the ancient gods' hearts. Gu Zheng's eyes flashed. Lin Feng's words hit the bullseye. Humans and the shaman race could not be lumped together. In the history of the Douling world, humans had always been as insignificant as ants. They were even cannon fodder in the Great Shaman-Demon War. Humans had never betrayed any alliances. It should be said that humans did not have the ability to betray any alliances. Humans were too weak. Other than their numbers, humans did not have any advantages. They could not be compared to the shaman race or the demon race. They were also much weaker than the ancient race. In a war, humans were always so insignificant and ordinary. Lin Feng's expression was calm. He swept his gaze across the ancient gods and said seriously, "A man cannot stand tall if he does not keep his word. I, Lin Feng, will do what I say. After the alliance, the ancient race's matter will be the humans' matter." Today, the demon race came with great momentum and swept across the northeast and northwest regions. If we form an alliance, we humans will immediately send our troops to guard the northeast and northwest regions. If the ancient race does not retreat, we humans will not retreat first. Bang! It was like a sudden clap of thunder that caused the ancient gods' eyes to light up. If the ancient race does not retreat, the humans will not retreat. His voice was heroic and firm. It reverberated in the entire temple and did not dissipate for a long time. Lin Feng's eyes were as dazzling as the stars. A faint aura spread out, and there was a stubbornness. To a certain extent, Lin Feng's character was influenced by the bloodline of the ancient race. He was proud and had a backbone. The temple master, Gu Zheng, nodded slightly to express his affirmation. He was not afraid that Lin Feng would lie. After all, the demon race was already at their doorstep. If Lin Feng were to lie, he would be exposed almost instantly. Moreover, he would be forever branded as a traitor. It was better to play it safe and not betray the alliance. Since Lin Feng said so, it proved that he really thought so. He was very sincere. Chapter 16:19. Are you not afraid that we will burn the bridge after crossing it? Ancient God Bai Yao's eyes were cold as he asked. Lin Feng faintly smiled as he swept his gaze over the ancient gods. I've heard that the ancient race is known for its benevolence and righteousness, so I naturally won't do such a disgraceful thing. It was just as Shun had said. The most troublesome of the ancient gods was ancient god Bai Yao. He hated humans and was extremely selfish. Of course not. Mother Earth kindly smiled. Our ancient race will always repay kindness. If the humans can help us survive this calamity, our ancient race will advance and retreat together with the humans and form an alliance. I agree with Mother Earth. Ancient god Whale Tun nodded. As the ancient god of the Northwest region, he had to bear the brunt of the war. Previously, he had been wavering, but now, he supported Lin Feng. Although there was some appreciation for Lin Feng, it was more of a compromise with the changing situation. Ancient god Azurwood sank into a deep silence. In truth, he had not said a single word since the beginning of the negotiations. As for ancient god Jingying, although he had a good impression of Lin Feng at the start, he was uncharacteristically silent. He did not agree or disagree. If one did not know, they would have thought that this matter did not concern them. But in reality, he was one of the ancient gods of the Northeast region, one of the two regions affected by the war. I agree with the alliance. Ancient god Gold Slaughter expressed his opinion. The humans have already shown enough sincerity. Rather than forming an alliance with the cold-blooded shamans, it would be better to join the humans in a fierce battle against the demonic beasts. Even if I lose, I will accept it. Ancient god Bai Yao sneered. I'm afraid that the humans are too weak, so forming an alliance is useless to us. Moreover, the humans want the alliance to treat us as equals and even treat us as the leaders. Why should we? Regardless of how we look at it, our ancient race is much stronger than the humans. Is that so? An indifferent voice suddenly interrupted ancient god Bai Yao. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and his aura howled like a storm. The energy of the world condensed within it as he pointed it at ancient god Bai Yao. I'll stand here and wait for your challenge. I'll only defend and not attack. If you can injure me, our human alliance will follow your ancient race's lead. Lin Feng's voice was not loud, but it pierced straight into ancient god Bai Yao's heart. That was an unrestrained fighting spirit, a killing intent that had been on the battlefield for a long time. It was not concealed at all. There was no need to be modest all the time. A kind person would be bullied by others, and a kind horse would be ridden by others. He treated the other party with respect, but the other party turned a blind eye to it. Why should he endure it any longer? In an instant, there was complete silence. Ancient god Dark Sparrow, who bore the brunt of this attack, was ghastly pale and trembling with rage. He didn't have the slightest will to fight in front of this godlike figure. Even Gu Sheng could not break through Lin Feng's defense, let alone him. If he forced himself to fight, he would only embarrass himself. But now, however, it was also difficult to advance or retreat. Yu, ancient god Yin Yao said through clenched teeth, but he couldn't find the words to say. He hadn't expected Lin Feng to not give him any face at all. In the grand temple of the realm of the gods, Lin Feng treated all the ancients as nothing. These words weren't just directed at him, but at all the ancient gods present, including Temple Master Guzhong. It was just that his aura was pressuring him alone. The other ancient gods didn't seem to be a threat at all. A fox using the tiger's might to intimidate others. Lin Feng coldly snorted, a hint of contempt in his eyes as he swept his gaze over the ancient gods. In the end, his gaze rested on Temple Master Guzhong. I came here on behalf of the humans, hoping to form an alliance with the ancients. I do not seek protection from the ancients. I hope that the ancients will give us the respect that humans deserve. I do not wish to hear any more insults from you. Gu Zheng's gaze fell on Lin Feng, but his expression didn't change. He had tacitly approved of ancient god Dark Sparrow's provocation, so he slowly said, "This matter was handled inappropriately by the ancients." As he spoke, he glanced at ancient god Dark Sparrow, whose face was ashen. "It's fine," Lin Feng indifferently said. "As one of the allies, I have already expressed sufficient sincerity and said all that needed to be said. I'll leave it to everyone to slowly discuss whether or not we are willing to form an alliance." After saying this, Lin Feng stood up and left. In 1 month, I will return to the realm of the gods to listen to your reply. We humans are in no hurry. Retreat in order to advance. Lin Feng couldn't be bothered to say anything else. Rather than wasting time here with these so-called ancient gods, he might as well return to the southern region to cultivate and slowly wait for their reply. It would be best if the ancients were willing, but if they weren't, the humans wouldn't necessarily be afraid of the Yao, especially now that his strength could break through again in a short period of time. One part of strength, one part confidence. If he could master the 7-inch fist, he could single-handedly establish his dominance over the Yao. He could even kill 1 or 2 Yao emperors and Yao kings to intimidate the Yao army. At that time, the Yao might not be willing to provoke him, at least not before the war with the sorcerer race. Leave. Lin Feng's expression was calm and decisive. His departure caused the ancient god's expressions to change. It was as Lin Feng had said. The humans weren't in a hurry, but the ancients were. The Yao army was already at the city gates. 1 month? What a joke. 1 month later, the northeastern and northwestern regions would probably be razed to the ground. Brother Lin, please wait. Gu Sheng saw that the situation wasn't good and urged him to stay. Lin Feng stopped, and the ancient gods relaxed. They were afraid that Lin Feng would leave. The temple master Gu Zheng's eyes were cold, and his voice was slightly hoarse. He said, "Human Emperor, please stay in the divine region for a few hours to 3 days. The ancients will definitely give you a reply." Lin Feng didn't turn back and only nodded. "Okay, I'll wait for the good news." Lin Feng hesitated for a moment before asking, "While I'm in the divine region, can I ask for a favor?" "Human Emperor, please speak," Gu Zhang said. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. "Can I enter the Pangus staircase again?" "Enter the Pangus staircase again?" The ancient gods looked at each other. They were puzzled and confused. Gu Zhang looked at Lin Feng, but all he could see was his back. He couldn't tell what he was thinking, so he frowned. After a long moment of hesitation, Gu Zhang said, "Of course." "Then many thanks." Lin Feng smiled, and then his body flickered and vanished. The ancient gods left behind were in an extremely passive position. They looked at ancient god Bai Yao with anger, blaming him for infuriating Lin Feng and making the situation extremely tense. Ancient god Bai Yao's face was ashen, and he ground his teeth so hard that they creaked. His organs were about to explode from anger. When had someone of his status ever been so mercilessly humiliated? But could he retaliate? In the Douling world, strength was everything. He entered the Pangus staircase again. Lin Feng naturally had his own ideas. After all, the Pangus staircase was an item of the ancients. Entering the divine region was already extremely difficult, let alone entering the divine region, where the divine palace was located. The Pangus staircase was equivalent to the forbidden grounds of the demonic beasts. The difference was that he could enter the forbidden grounds of the demonic beasts at will without fear of angering them. But could he enter the divine region at will? Unless he had a complete falling out with the ancients. But even if it wasn't for the humans, for his grandfather, for his mother, and for Huang Yin, he couldn't sever his ties with the ancients. In addition, half of the blood of the ancients flowed through his veins. This was an ironclad fact. Even if they didn't recognize him as a part of them, it was enough that they recognized him and his mother recognized him. As a person, he didn't need to be responsible for those unimportant people, but he had to be responsible for his loved ones, for the people he loved deeply, and for the people who trusted him. A few hours if short, 3 days if long. Lin Feng leisurely stepped onto the Pangus staircase, a smile on his face as he pondered. Then 3 days it is. Walking on the Pangus staircase was like walking on flat ground. Illusions flashed past. The transformation of his willpower made it easier for him to step on the Pangus staircase now. Since he wasn't in a hurry, he might as well be in a hurry with the ancients. Moreover, this was a rare cultivation opportunity, so every day counted. One must know that in other places in the Douling world, there wasn't any other place to train one's willpower. Although willpower isn't valued in the Douling world, the importance of willpower in the Starry Sky world has begun to increase. However, according to Duo, a place to train one's willpower is still extremely rare. In most places in the starry sky world, the methods to train one's willpower are still in an extremely primitive stage. Lin Feng thought as he walked. It didn't affect his state of mind at all, and his expression was calm and relaxed. The cultivation of willpower was very crucial. From what he knew, there were many ways to use willpower in the future starry sky world, and its potential had been completely unearthed. Not only did it affect the existence of the body and soul of an army, it also affected the use of treasures. There were also all sorts of extremely rare secret methods to train one's willpower that were extremely heaven-defying. Even his master in name, Bai Li Feng, had only heard of them and had never come into contact with them. One could only imagine how mysterious willpower was. But here, an ordinary planet had a rare place to train one's willpower. Although it was only a basic willpower training, it was already quite impressive. If I sell this Panga's staircase in the future, I'm afraid I'll instantly become a tycoon in the starry sky world. Lin Feng smiled indifferently, but it was only a thought. Just the cultivation effects of the Pangu staircase alone, he was already unwilling to part with the 5th level of the Panga technique. It could help him cultivate to the limit of the starry sky war god. Moreover, if he sold this Panga staircase, would he still be able to survive? What a joke. If he didn't have strength but had a treasure that others coveted, he would be courting death. We'll talk about the future in the future. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. In a short period of time, he had already stepped onto the 3,000th level effortlessly. Compared to the first time he entered, he had improved greatly. His gaze was fixed on the 4,000th level, and his heart was filled with a strong fighting spirit. Although the 5,000th level was just a stepping stone, it was quite useful. The absorption of the power of heaven and earth, apart from the Panga technique and the strength of his body, was also related to willpower. The stronger one's willpower, the more power of heaven and earth one could absorb. Just like the ability to command, the stronger one's ability to command, the more troops one could control. This was a proportional relationship. What he really wanted was not a huge increase in his willpower, but to absorb as much power of heaven and earth as possible, slowly increasing the first level of the Panga technique, and charging towards the 5,400th level. According to the information, there was another good thing waiting for him there. It might even be better than the 7-inch fist. Chapter 16:20. Cultivate. Lin Feng settled down in the Panga staircase. The tempering of willpower was not something that could be done overnight. However, the first tempering was usually the best. Although the second and third tempering was declining, it was still quite good, especially since Lin Feng could perfectly pass the 5,000 step. It was equivalent to showing the entire cultivation process perfectly. Naturally, it was very different. Being able to pass and not passing were two completely different results. Just the recovery of willpower in the mysterious space of the 5,000th step was already very different. One had to know that the recovery of willpower was even more ethereal and illusory than the recovery of one's soul. Usually, it would take a very long time to recover from the depleted willpower. This was also one of the main reasons why the ancient race experts were unwilling to break through the Panga staircase. After all, willpower seemed to be of little use. However, when 80 to 90% of willpower was depleted, all kinds of drawbacks and problems would appear. For example, one's mind would be sluggish, their willpower would not be focused, and they would feel dizzy during battle. Whoosh! Lin Feng shot up like a rocket. His speed was so fast that it made people gasp in amazement. On the second day of cultivation on the Panga staircase, the tempering of willpower had decreased by 99%. When he could easily break through the 5,000th step, the effect of this elementary tempering of willpower began to decrease bit by bit. As his willpower increased, the effect would only become worse. Of course, this was a world of difference compared to the most primitive tempering of willpower. The most primitive tempering of willpower, such as sitting, pain, concentration, and so on, might not be comparable to walking on the Panga staircase, even if he did not stop for a year. This was the value of a treasure that could be used to hone one's willpower, and Lin Feng was using it crazily. From 2 hours to an hour, from 1 hour to 15 minutes, to the time it takes for an incense stick to burn on the third day, the time Lin Feng needed to climb the 5,000 step was less than 15 minutes. His improvement was already very great. However, the further he went, the more difficult it was to shorten the time. This was because the speed of improvement had decreased too much. No matter how strong his willpower was, he would still encounter some obstacles after entering the 4,000th step. It was not easy to overcome in a short period of time. The third day, the 14th hour. Phew! Lin Feng let a light breath. He closed his eyes and slowly sensed his surroundings. Within the mysterious space of the 5,000th level, Lin Ming slowly recovered his willpower. Although he was tired, there was still a bit of excitement. Regardless of whether or not his alliance with the ancient race would succeed, at the very least, this trip to the divine realm had been a fruitful one. He had earned enough. 100 seconds. I've finally reached the 100-second mark. My willpower has increased by quite a bit, but it should only be an ordinary increase and not a real increase. According to my estimation, my willpower was at the level of an intermediate Star Warrior before. Now, it should be at the level of an advanced Star Warrior, or even the limit of an advanced Star Warrior. However, in order to cultivate the second level of the Panga technique, my willpower needs to be at the level of a Star Warrior, which is still very far away. It seemed like a small step, but it was actually a huge bottleneck and shackle. If one's willpower reaches the level of a Starry Sky Warrior, the first 5,000 layers of illusions will be nothing more than passing clouds, just like the first 4,000 layers to me. 50 seconds, 20 seconds, no, at most 10 seconds or even less. If I can climb all 5,000 steps within 10 seconds, my willpower will be enough to cultivate the second level of the Panga technique. Lin Feng wasn't complacent. Unlike the experts in the Do spirit world, Lin Feng had already set his sights on the distant starry sky world and the boundless stars. His current strength was nothing. According to Duo, many slaves in the starry sky world were far stronger than him. In the starry sky world, Star Warriors were trash. Lin Ming wasn't even a Star Warrior. Even if he was invincible in the Do spirit world, he would only be the strongest frog in the well. He definitely couldn't relax. There's still 10 hours left. Continue. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. His willpower had recovered, and his fighting spirit was ignited again. There were still 10 hours left before the 3-day time limit. Lin Ming naturally didn't want to waste it. Every bit of willpower increased would increase the absorption of the heaven and earth power. The more, the better. 10 hours later. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure appeared in the shrine once again. He wasn't tired from 3 days of continuous cultivation. Instead, he looked radiant and energetic. His eyes were as dazzling as the stars. The increase in his willpower made his aura completely different. He was like an emperor who had descended. Even if Lin Feng didn't release any heaven and earth power and just walked in quietly, the shrine had become much quieter. This place was just like a palace, and Lin Feng was the only emperor in the palace. He had come. Lin Feng turned a blind eye to the ancient gods and walked over. His gaze swept over the crowd, and he slowly sat down. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said, "Everyone, I wonder if the discussion has reached a conclusion." The ancient gods looked at each other before their gazes landed on the shrine master, Guzheng. For the past 3 days, other than discussing nonstop, they had been watching Lin Feng's cultivation and his abnormal cultivation speed. Now, he needed less than 100 seconds to easily traverse the entire 5,000 steps of the Panga staircase. This speed was simply heaven-defying. Lin Feng's performance had shocked their hearts time and time again, changing their view of this human. There was no end to it. He was like a boundless sea that didn't know where the end was. There's already a conclusion. The shrine master, Guzheng, paused for a moment and nodded. According to the discussions over the past few days, we have reached a consensus. Gu Zhang's eyes flashed as he looked at Lin Feng. We agree to form an alliance with the humans. However, it's different from the Wizard Alliance. We are on equal footing with the Human Alliance. However, as you said before, during the Third Great Wizard War, the ancient race and the humans must follow the principle of advancing and retreating together. Oh, Lin Feng was surprised. He didn't expect that in just 3 days, the ancient race would really reach a consensus and agree to form an alliance. The unexpectedly smooth process made him a little more cautious. The simpler and easier it was, the more likely it was that there was something hidden behind it. What if both sides don't agree? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. This was very important. There was no problem with being on equal footing, but there had to be a leader for both sides to form an alliance. If the wizard tribe was in charge of the wizard tribe, and the humans were in charge of the humans, how would they be able to advance and retreat together? The shrine master, Gu Zheng, was not surprised. He seemed to have expected Lin Feng to ask such a question. He said calmly, "That's simple. We'll form an alliance with the humans and help each other. It's a form of self-protection. If the demon tribe invades the ancient race's territory, the humans will come to help defend it. If the demon tribe invades the humans' territory, the ancient race will send experts over." Lin Feng frowned. These words were equivalent to nonsense. To put it bluntly, they were borrowing the humans' strength to defend against the demon tribe and get through the ancient race's current crisis. What benefits would such an alliance bring to the humans? What if the demon tribe divided their forces? What if the demon tribe attacked the wizard tribe and defeated them one by one? A dragon couldn't do without a head. An alliance had to have a leader to lead the entire situation. Otherwise, the so-called alliance would be nothing but empty words on a piece of paper. Is this your final decision? Lin Feng looked at Gu Zheng and asked after a long while. The shrine master, Gu Zheng, nodded. He looked calm and composed, as if he had a card up his sleeve. Lin Feng looked at the ancient gods and saw that their faces were filled with complicated emotions. However, he did not see Gu Zheng. He could not help but sigh in his heart. It seemed that he had thought that the negotiation would be too easy. The ancient race was more arrogant than he had imagined. They were unwilling to lower their heads. No wonder such a powerful race with monstrous talents could not be brought to the stage and was restrained by the wizard tribe. While the pride of the ancient race made them stronger, it also restricted them to the same place. It restricted them to a small area. I understand. Lin Feng nodded. The last bit of hope in his heart disappeared. He stood up without hesitation and left under the shocked gazes of the ancient gods. He did not say another word. Talking with them would just be a waste of time. He might be able to change some of the content, but it would definitely not go according to his plan. It was far from the bottom line of his idea of an alliance. They agreed, but the humans, they did not agree. Gu Zheng looked at Lin Feng's back and made a firm decision. For a moment, he did not know what to say. This was naturally not his bottom line, but it was not far from it. As a shrine master, he had to be responsible for the ancient race. Accepting the alliance was already the greatest concession he could make. How could he let a human lead the ancient race? What a joke. Even if they protected their foundation, it would be a great humiliation to the ancient race. Stop! Ancient God Ming Yao roared. His eyes were as sharp as swords, and a hint of greed flashed through them. Lin Feng, hand over what you obtained from the Penga staircase. It belongs to the ancient race. How can a human like you possess it? Lin Feng was stunned. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When the forest was large, all kinds of birds could be found. This ancient God Ming Yao was truly shameless. He even wanted the Penga technique. Unfortunately, Senior Pangu had already stated that he could not teach it to others. But even if he could teach it, he would not be willing. Why? Lin Feng laughed mockingly, but he couldn't even be bothered to pay attention to ancient God Ming Yao. He continued to walk forward. The ancient gods behind him had unsightly expressions, especially Mother Earth and ancient god Metal Slaughter. They couldn't help but sigh. They were extremely dissatisfied with the outcome of this negotiation. You dare to leave? Ancient God Ming Yao roared. Thump! Lin Feng stopped, and a faint killing intent spread out from his body along with the energy of the world. Turning his head, Lin Feng swept his gaze over the ancient gods and rested it on ancient god Ming Yao. His eyes shone with fighting intent. What? You want to keep me here? Do you have the ability to do so? His voice was filled with contempt, causing ancient god Ming Yao's face to turn ashen. He couldn't help but take half a step back. You want the item from the Panga staircase? Sure. Lin Feng's voice was calm and composed. He looked at Gu Zheng with interest and said provocatively, I, Lin Feng, will stay in the southern region. You're welcome to come and take it from me at any time. As soon as Lin Feng finished speaking, he left. Chapter 16:21. Decisiveness. Lin Feng calmly left the deity domain. From the beginning to the end, he did not reveal any other emotions. The alliance between the humans and the ancients was a win-win situation, but the ancients would benefit more than the humans. He didn't want the ancients to be defeated by the demons, but personal feelings were one thing, and racial interests were another. The ancients wanted the human alliance, but didn't pay any price? What a joke. The humans of today had been reborn. They didn't even need to care about the sorcerer race, let alone the ancients. If they didn't form an alliance, the ancients would only suffer. Whoosh! Lin Feng left immediately. His heart was filled with anger. He had already given the ancient race enough face and sincerity by inviting them time and time again. However, the ancient race did not appreciate his kindness at all. They only wanted to take advantage of him, and even had designs on the Panga technique. What a joke. Disaster was imminent, but they only cared about themselves. When the time came, they would be defeated by the demons. He had already done what he needed to do. Whether the ancients lived or died in the future had nothing to do with him. I'm sorry, grandfather. I've tried my best. Lin Feng pondered in his heart. His body was just like a shuttle as he instantly disappeared and left the Gu clan treasure trove. He couldn't bear it anymore. Instead of wasting time arguing with these arrogant ancient gods, he might as well return to the southern region and slowly make plans. The divine palace, damn brat. Ancient god Ming Yao was so angry that his hair stood on end, and his face was ashen. He's gone. The hall master looked in the direction that Lin Feng had left in and sighed. However, he felt extremely conflicted. He felt pain and emptiness at the same time. He had guessed that Lin Feng would reject the proposal, but he didn't expect Lin Feng to be so resolute and leave without giving the ancients any face. The alliance was officially canceled. Sigh. Mother Earth shook her head helplessly and closed her eyes in pain, as if she could already foresee the hellish disaster that would befall the ancients. Ancient god Golden Slaughter and ancient god Whale Tun had ugly expressions, especially ancient god Whale Tun. Lin Feng's departure and the failure of the alliance meant that the demons' invasion of the northwest region was on the agenda, and the ancients had nothing to rely on. Unless he was prepared to fight the demons to the death, he could only choose to flee. The atmosphere was heavy. The ancient gods all had their own ideas, and they were like a plate of loose sand. Done. Ancient god Yin Yao looked at the dejected and disappointed crowd and shouted, Everyone, there's no need to be disappointed. Humans can't even protect themselves, so what help can they provide to our ancient races? We still have to rely on ourselves to defend against the demon race. As long as we fight this battle beautifully and deal a heavy blow to the demon race, I believe that our ancient race will definitely be able to overcome this crisis. Moreover, the sorcerer tribe has not responded yet. They might send reinforcements in a few days. At that time, if we form an alliance with the humans, how will we explain it to the sorcerer tribe? Come, brace yourselves and prepare for battle. Ancient god Dark Harrier clapped his hands in encouragement. However, there wasn't much spirit in the eyes of the ancient gods. How could the low morale be stirred up with just a few words? None of them were 3 years old. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this time around, the ancient race was doomed. The southern region. Did he fail? Shun murmured. As expected, Thousand Love Empress nodded lightly. not showing any disappointment. In the end, the ancient race still looks down on us humans. Lin Feng said indifferently with a hint of mockery in his eyes. He was laughing at the fact that the ancient race was still stubborn in the face of disaster and insisted on holding on to that pointless backbone and self-esteem, unwilling to let go of even a little bit of pride. Since that was the case, there was no need to force it. Instead, it would appear that the humans were groveling. If they were not in an alliance, then so be it. What was the big deal? How is the implementation of the God-making plan? Lin Feng looked at Shun. This matter is being handled by King Yin and I, so there are no problems. There's still many elites in the other 8 regions of the human race. The most outstanding ones are Hua Feng, Wei Lizi, Meng Shou, and the rest of the 11. Even the worst of them is comparable to Wu Tsong and Pang Mintian. The best, Sanjie, is even comparable to Thousand Love Empress, Shun said with satisfaction. Oh, Lin Feng couldn't help but be delighted. Sanjie's talent was comparable to Thousand Love Empress? That was a rare genius of the human race. Hua Feng, Wei Lizi, Meng Shou, and the rest of the 11 people were comparable to Wu Tsong and Pang Mintian. One had to know that Wu Tsong and Pang Mintian were the best in the second batch of God-making plan. They were already Sage Kings. That was pretty good. Although bad news came one after another, there was also a lot of good news. The God-making plan was the plan that he valued the most. It was also the factor that he valued the most in the other 8 regions of the human race. The human race had a lot of potential. Maybe the average strength of the human race was weak, but the population base was there. Coupled with their outstanding comprehension and countless years of accumulation, there would always be some geniuses buried in the sea of people and not discovered by others. There were so many geniuses in the southern region alone. There would naturally be many in the other 8 regions. As long as these geniuses were given the right cultivation conditions and environment, breaking through to the Sage realm or even the Sage King realm would be a piece of cake. The human race had always been weak because their origins were too lowly, coupled with the strength of the sorcerer race and the demon race, which suppressed the rise of the human race. Various factors led to the current situation. Under the vicious cycle, the human race had to accept their fate. But actually, the human race was not weak. In his opinion, their potential surpassed that of the sorcerer race and the demon race. But time was too tight. No matter what, cultivation and comprehension required time. It was not something that could be achieved overnight. Spirit gathering array. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he thought to himself. If the human race could have a spirit gathering array and put all these geniuses into cultivate, it would take at least 10 days to half a month, and at most a few months for them to be reborn. At that time, the human race would naturally become stronger. In the divine plane, he had seen a small spirit gathering array of the ancient race. In the entire Doling world, there were a total of 2 known to exist. The other one, according to Gu Sheng, was in the Dream Whisperer race. Those big forces are afraid of offending the heavenly spirit race and the neutral races, but I am not. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Moreover, the situation is tense now. I can't care so much. In order to better strengthen the human race, there were some things that he had to do. Even if he had to be a bandit once, so what? Shun, help me investigate something immediately, Lin Feng said. Shun was slightly surprised. His eyes flashed. Lin Feng looked into the distance and said seriously, help me investigate the Dream Whisperer race, the Lulan Emperor, and most importantly, the location of the Dream Whisperer race. Lin Feng's voice was sonorous and decisive. His eyes shone with a strong light. Okay. Shun did not ask further. He knew that this matter was very important. Chapter 16:22. After settling some matters, Lin Feng immediately went into seclusion. It was a race against time. As for the matter of the ancient race, he had already thrown it to the back of his mind. With the development of the Great Shaman-Demon War, he did not consider the safety of the northeast and northwest ancient regions at all. This was because this was an unsolvable situation. Even if he led the human powerhouses to reinforce them, the chances of successfully resisting the demon race would not exceed 30%. With the ancient race alone, it could be said that they would definitely lose. But whether the ancient race won or lost had nothing to do with him. Hugh. Lin Feng took a deep breath and sat down cross-legged. His entire body had completely merged with the world, as if he had become a part of the world. He greedily absorbed the essence of the world. His limbs and meridians were like an octopus that was endlessly hungry. His cells were madly devouring the power of the world. Under the guidance of his willpower, he was using the first level of the Pangu technique to its limit. So fast, the absorption speed is almost 10 times faster than before. Joy appeared on Lin Feng's face as his heart skipped a beat. Sure enough, just like the experience left in the message, as his willpower increased, the absorption speed of the world's power would rapidly increase. In just a few days, his willpower had increased by 3 levels. At first, when his body reached the peak of the Saint King stage, it was the first level. After breaking through the 5,000th step, his willpower increased to the second level. After 3 days of continuous tempering, his willpower reached the third level. Although he had increased the most after breaking through the second level, the decisive factor was still the third level. Even if the increase in willpower from each Panga staircase was minuscule, it could not be stopped. Again and again, round after round, his willpower had now reached the limit of a starry sky warrior. Of course, he could still increase his willpower, but it was much more difficult than before. Moreover, although he and the ancient race were not enemies, they had fallen out. If he wanted to enter the deity realm and climb the Pangu staircase again, he would have to shed all pretense of cordiality and start a war with the ancient race. Not to mention whether the human race could defeat the ancient race. Just the other factors alone made it impossible for him to do so. Therefore, in a short period of time, his willpower could be considered to have reached its peak. However, he was already quite satisfied with the absorption speed that was almost 10 times faster. Now, my clone has 2 paths to take. First, continue to absorb the power of the world and continue to strengthen myself. Then, I will break through the 5,400 step. Second, cultivate the 7-inch fist and increase my combat power. Lin Feng fell into deep thought. The path in front of the clone was very clear. Perhaps there were other methods of cultivation, such as attuning treasures or comprehending mysteries, but none of them were as direct as these 2 paths. The first path was to accumulate enough strength. Obviously, the thing on the 5,400 floor was definitely better than the 7-inch fist. Moreover, absorbing the power of the heavens and earth was the right path, and strengthening oneself also had the effect of increasing one's strength. It could be said to be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Compared to the first path, the second path was much simpler. Firstly, the difficulty of cultivating the 7-inch fist was unknown. Secondly, the right way to break through the starry sky level was to continuously absorb the power of the heavens and the earth. But the only advantage was that if the 7-inch fist was successfully cultivated, even if it was only the first level, it would immediately increase the combat power of the doppelganger. After all, this was a technique exclusive to the Tao of the body. Furthermore, he had personally witnessed the might of the 7-inch fist. If he could reach the 7th level of the 7-inch fist, its might would be unimaginable. Lin Feng pondered for a while. There were gains and losses. Naturally, both could not be done at the same time. For the time being, I'll take the second path. Lin Feng nodded. Light flashed in his eyes. He already had an answer in his heart. Perhaps the first path was the right one. But at present, increasing his combat power would be more helpful to his strength and the situation. Moreover, even if he could absorb the power of the heavens and earth and strengthen his body to the 5,400th floor, he would not be able to enter the Panga staircase. This was the biggest problem. In this case, he might as well see what he could get first. A bird in the hand was better than 10 birds in the bush. The 7-inch fist it is. Lin Feng closed his eyes. He was still confident. He was quite confident in his comprehension ability, especially after the information of the 7-inch fist entered his mind. Most of it was related to the operation of the meridians and the control of the power of the heavens and earth. Perhaps it was a little troublesome and uncomfortable for Heaven Realm cultivators. But for Heaven Realm cultivators, it was very common. It was similar to controlling objects. But now, what he controlled was a stronger power of the heavens and earth. The control of the soul also became the control of the willpower, breaking the whole into parts. The key of the 7-inch fist is the power of the soul, with the power of the heavens and earth as the guide and the soul as the foundation. The body's ability can be unleashed to the limit. Although the first level is a simple twofold amplification, the most important thing is not the amplification, but the application of power. It is not purely the path of strength, nor is it the path of strength. It is the power of the heavens and earth. By using the power of the heavens and earth accurately and combining it with the soul, the power of the heavens and earth can be unleashed. Although the first level is the smallest increase, it is the foundation of the foundation, or even the foundation of the foundation. Only after mastering the first level can one be considered to have truly opened the use of the power of the heavens and earth. Lin Feng pondered. He was carefully comprehending and understanding. His use of the power of the heavens and earth was still very shallow. He was either using it as pure energy or converting it into constellation energy. However, he had yet to explore the true mystery of the power of the heavens and earth. How could its existence be so simple? The path of the body was the perfect derivation of the power of the heavens and earth. Using the body as a great array, using every meridian branch and every cell as the origin of the array. The circulation of the power of the heavens and earth uses the willpower as the axis and flows through all the meridians in the body. Finally, it will combine perfectly with the soul and unleash the fundamental power of the soul. Take the right fist as an example. Even if it is only a twofold increase, it is not an ordinary twofold increase. One also has to consider the compatibility of the power of the heavens and earth with the soul, including the strength of the body's most essential power, the power of the condensation, and so on. The power of one punch may surpass the strongest spear technique of my doomsday spear. Lin Feng nodded secretly. The deeper his understanding, the more he felt the mystery of the 7-inch fist. He had only scratched the surface, but he could already feel its boundless power. If he could master the first level in a short period of time, he would be able to increase his combat power by another level with just his physical strength. The strong would be even stronger. The stronger I am, the safer humans will be. When the time comes, as long as I can erupt with enough power, the demon race will definitely be cautious and will not dare to act recklessly against the 9 great domains of the human race. I will succeed, I must succeed. Lin Feng clenched his fists and was full of confidence. His body was tense and his mind was completely focused. He was quickly immersed in the comprehension of the 7-inch fist. Times have changed. Lin Feng entered a state of seclusion, but the situation in the Douling world changed drastically. The demon race invaded the 2 ancient domains. This battle shook the 3 great clans of the human race. Under the leadership of the Yao clan commanders by Yunlei and Kuei Tianyuan, each led an army and led the Yao kings and Yao stars to invade the ancient northeast region and the ancient northwest region. Even though the ancient clans, under the leadership of the deities Templar, had gathered the power of the ancient gods to resist stubbornly, the Yao clan, who had the absolute advantage, relied on the overwhelming difference in strength to smoothly win this battle. The ancient race was defeated. Southern region. What a pity. King Yin sighed softly. Yes, Gusheng's strength is as strong as Lin Feng said. She even defeated the demon clan's bull demon king, Fang Ning muttered. It's useless, he still lost to the great sage in the end. Xiao Jian frowned slightly. If not for the ancient gods risking their lives to save him, and his father, Gu Zheng, sacrificing himself to fight the great sage, Gu Shan would have been killed and not just seriously injured. Sigh. Thousand Love Emperor's beautiful eyes flashed slightly as she sighed softly. The pitiful hearts of parents. Even though he hated the stubbornness and pedantry of the temple master, Gu Zheng, he knew he was not a bad person when he saw how he was willing to sacrifice himself to save his son. It was just that they had different standpoints, different environments, and different ideologies. In essence, he was still a human with a soft heart. No matter how strict he was with his son, he still regarded him as the most important person in his heart. To protect him, he did not hesitate to sacrifice his life. The most despicable is the wizard race. They bully the weak and fear the strong. They betray us. Juan Macho raised his thick eyebrows and said angrily. From the beginning to the end, the wizard race did not seem to know anything. Not to mention helping the ancient race fight against the wizard race. They did not even lend a helping hand and allowed the ancient race to self-destruct. King Yin frowned and said, "Fortunately, we are allies, but they are so cold-blooded and heartless. Fortunately, we have already drawn a clear line with the wizard race. What's the difference between such an inferior race and the demon race? Asking a tiger for its skin will not have a good ending," Fong Ning said indifferently. Sighs could be heard one after another. The people of the southern region felt sorry for the ancient race, but they were also worried about the future. After all, the demon race was really fierce. Without the two major barriers of the ancient northeast region and the ancient northwest region, the inland region was wide open. The demon race could continue to attack the ancient race and could also turn to attack the 9 regions of the human race. Since then, the demon race had gained the upper hand in the war between the wizard race and the demon race again. However, it was different from the previous time when they gained the upper hand. This time, the wizard race had suffered a great loss. After losing the wizard king, they had no leader and were in an extremely passive situation. Under the leadership of the new wizard king Zhu Juyin, the demon race seemed to have become a coward and was completely isolated from the world. What other threats were there? They were afraid that they could not even protect themselves. I hope the next one will not be us. King Yin was slightly worried. It would be a lie to say that he was not afraid when it was really a critical moment. After all, the demon race was not fighting on a small scale this time. They were attacking with all their might. No matter how confident they were in Lin Feng, it was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. Moreover, the demon race had far more martial saints and king sages than the human race. They did not need any tactics to completely crush the demon race. Everyone looked at each other and felt hesitant. It was as if there was an extra burden on their shoulders. At this moment, naturally, it won't be us. An indifferent voice sounded. Everyone looked over and their eyes lit up. They saw Lin Feng and Shun walking over together. They looked relaxed. Lin Feng looked at the crowd, and his eyes widened slightly as he said slowly, "We've received accurate news that the demon clans are ignoring the human territories. Their targets are the ancient region in the east, the ancient region in the west, and the central region in the east. This time, the ancient race is in big trouble." Chapter 16:23. Indeed, the ancient race was in big trouble. Previously, they had gathered the strength of the entire clan in an attempt to use their territorial advantage to fight against the demon race. Although they had caused the demon race to suffer heavy losses, they had underestimated the demon race's determination to win. The demon race had relied on their absolute numbers to turn the tables. The aboriginals had either fled or scattered. In an instant, the aboriginals had lost 1/3 of their strength. How cruel! The ancient race only had 60% of their strength left, and there were countless injured people among them. How could they fight the demon race again? No matter how they fought, they would die. Although the demon race was not proficient in military tactics, how could they not know the basic tactic of pursuing the enemy while they were victorious? To put it simply, they were hitting the ancient race when they were down. Since the ancient race had lost, they would make the ancient race suffer a more thorough and painful defeat. They would beat the ancient race until they could never recover. The demon race was naturally ruthless. They would not show any mercy to their enemies. Within the 7 great ancient regions of the ancient race, there wasn't a central ancient region. This was because it wasn't an orthodox ancient region. There weren't any clansmen, nor were there any ancient gods. There was only a special and transcendent palace known as the Deity Palace. This was also the Deity Palace that Lin Feng had entered previously. Its geographical location was right in the center of the 7 great ancient regions. The demon race's attack area was quite domineering. Like a snow plow, they would plow everything they saw. The ancient regions of the east and ancient regions of the west were at the 2 extremes. The divine domain, which was right in the middle, was naturally not exempt. The demon race seemed to be certain that the ancient race had no power to resist and was ready to beat the ancient race into a bottomless abyss. If the ancient race really went down to the 3 ancient regions, it could be said that the ancient race wanted to recover. It was impossible. The demon race is forcing the ancient race into a dead end. A hint of worry flashed across Fong Ning's face. Aren't they afraid of desperate measures? Wang Macho found it funny. The demon race doesn't care, Shun said indifferently. With the death of the Witch King Jiang, the demon race has completely removed the mountain that has been weighing on their hearts for many years. They no longer fear any forces. Moreover, without a military advisor, the demon race's battle tactics are similar to the Second Great Witch Demon War. They only grasp the general direction and won't spend too much time dealing with the details because to them, power is everything. As long as they have enough strength, they can win no matter how they fight. Of course, the demons have also learned from their defeat in the Second Great Magi Demon War. From big to small, from small 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 to small, from Shun's eyes flashed. As the oldest and most experienced cultivator in the southern region, he naturally knew everything about the monster clan. If that's the case, it'll be troublesome, King Yin said worriedly. Although the southern region is still far from the central region, the other regions are very close. Once the 3 ancient regions of the ancient race are broken, there is a 99% chance that the next target of the demon race will be us. We have just conquered the 9 ancient regions of the human race. Are we going to give up on a few of them immediately? If we do this, we will be chilling the hearts of the people. However, if we don't give up, what can we do? King Yin only felt a headache coming on. His muttering to himself caused the scene to instantly freeze. With the development of the war, the human race's crisis was about to begin. Given the nature of the demon race, they were overbearing and ignored everything. Naturally, they would not be afraid of humans and avoid them. When the time came, a fierce battle would be unavoidable. As for how strong the humans were, everyone knew very well in their hearts. Clap, clap. Lin Feng clapped his hands. All right, there's no need to be so worried. Things won't necessarily develop like this. Among them, Lin Feng paused for a moment as a glint flashed in his eyes. He said slowly, there should be some changes. Variables? Everyone looked at each other in confusion. Only Thousand Love Emperor's beautiful eyes looked at Lin Feng and seemed to understand something. Yes, variables. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Moreover, at the very most, there is still at least a month before the monster clan attacks our human region. A lot of things can happen in this 1 month. It might not necessarily be bad news. Furthermore, The monster clan might not be invincible. Since they were defeated by the witch clan twice, the monster clan might not necessarily win the third great witch demon war. I believe in that. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and his faint aura revealed a strong sense of confidence. This confidence that came out of nowhere moved the hearts of the people in the southern region. Although they did not know what Lin Feng was planning, but they trusted Lin Feng from the bottom of their hearts. The kingdom of Lulan. Lin Feng frowned. Yes, the Dream Whisper clan is in the core region of the kingdom of Lulan. This is not a big secret in the kingdom of Lulan, Shun said softly. Shun's expression was very calm. He did not know why Lin Feng wanted to know where the Dream Whisper clan was. If he knew what Lin Feng was planning, he would have been shocked. This is troublesome, Lin Feng thought to himself. He had not expected the Dream Whisper clan to be in the kingdom of Lulan. It was completely unexpected. He had originally planned to go straight to the point after learning where the Dream Whisper clan was. He would directly ask for a small spirit gathering array or borrow it temporarily. If the Dream Whisper clan did not give it to him, he would rob them and kill them. For the sake of the human race's safety, he had already thrown caution to the wind. However, the Dream Whisper clan was in the kingdom of Lulan. This made things much more difficult. However, it did make sense. Although the kingdom of Lulan was one of the 3 major cities in the Sorcerer realm, and every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, it was still under the rule of the Lulan Emperor. The Lulan Emperor was a member of the Dream Whisper clan. What did it matter if he used some of his personal power? After all, there weren't many of the 8,000 neutral races in each race. The most dangerous place was the safest place. Any danger could happen in the wildlands. However, the Lulan Emperor would not only protect the Lulan Emperor, but more importantly, they would also be protected by the Heavenly Spirit. Lin Feng frowned and shook his head. He could ignore the Lulan Emperor and even be confident in killing him, but he could not ignore the Heavenly Spirit. Its hidden power was even greater than the combined power of the sorcerer and demon races. If he caused a ruckus in the Lulan kingdom, took over the Dream Whisper clan, and even killed the Lulan Emperor, the Heavenly Spirit would not just sit by and watch. Even if he was not afraid, what about the human race? Although the small spirit gathering formation was precious, it was not worth taking such a huge risk. No wonder no expert has dared to touch the Dream Whisperer clan for so many years. Someone as ambitious and ruthless as Sorcerer Emperor Jiang must have thought about it. I'm afraid he had the same idea as me and had no choice but to give up. Lin Feng was inwardly shaken as he thought about it. After sitting on the throne of the human emperor, he had truly thought for the human race and gained a deeper understanding of Sorcerer Emperor Jiang. No matter what was right or wrong, it was not so simple. It was either black or white. Emperor Lin, why are you suddenly interested in the Dream Whisperer clan? Shun asked curiously when he saw the change in Lin Feng's expression. It's nothing. Lin Feng smiled helplessly and said calmly, I originally wanted to ask the Dream Whisperer clan for something, but if we were in the Lulan kingdom, it would not be so convenient. Ask for something? Not so convenient? Shun raised his eyebrows. Even though he was confused, he could somewhat understand Lin Feng's meaning. He couldn't help but shake his head. Only Lin Feng would dare to ask the Dream Whisperer clan for something. They were a transcendent existence, ranked in the top 3 of the 8,000 neutral races. How could they give face to the human race? Shun's eyes suddenly flashed, and he asked curiously, Is the thing that the Dream Whisperer clan has very important? Lin Feng nodded, his eyes shining brightly. If we can obtain it, the number of saint and sage king experts in the human territory will more than double in a short period of time. Hiss! Shun couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. More than double. Ever since the God-making plan began, he was well aware of the human race's speed of growth. Every day, many saint experts were born, and every few days, a sage king expert was born. This speed was already heaven-defying. If the sorcerer and demon race learned of this, they would definitely be shocked. They would even do anything to exterminate the human race. But now this heaven-defying speed could still increase. Bang, bang, bang. Shun's heart thumped. He felt that this was inconceivable. He looked at Lin Feng, feeling more and more mysterious. If Lin Feng really obtained the thing that the Dream Whisper clan had, how strong would the human race be? How terrifying would that be? He believed that after a short period of adjustment, their strength would increase. They would be able to contend with the sorcerer and demon race in a year and a half, or even a few years or more. How could a human race become so strong? When he thought of this, Shun couldn't help but feel shocked. Unbelievable. On the other hand, Lin Feng was calm and composed. Shun's experience was indeed very deep, but no matter how deep his experience was, it was limited to the Douling world. Although the Douling world was vast and boundless, that was based on his current vision. If he stood in the starry sky world, the Douling world was just a small speck of dust. Although Lin Feng didn't have much experience, he had seen more than Shun. After all, he had a teacher like Duo. Humans were weak? What a joke. In the starry sky world, humans occupied a large portion of the border areas and were very famous. Although there were many different races with different bloodlines and genes, humans had similar characteristics. Their speed of reproduction was astonishing, and their average comprehension was outstanding. One of these two characteristics might not be much, but the other was the true achievement of the human race's ruling status. Even in the starry sky world, they were at the top of the pyramid. Humans were, of course, very strong. In the Douling world, humans only started slowly, one step slower, and they were suppressed by the sorcerer clan and massacred by the demon race. Due to various environmental and geographical factors, they were born at the wrong time. That was why humans were in such an awkward position. Even so, humans were still rapidly reproducing, stubbornly surviving, and fighting against the sorcerer clan and demon race. The ancestors of humans were very far-sighted. They allied with the sorcerer clan to protect themselves, and their presence spread across the Douling world. After the Second Great War between the sorcerer clan and the demon race, they took advantage of the fact that the demon race's vitality was greatly weakened to slowly infiltrate the boundless ocean. Although they didn't conquer it, they spread their net widely, and their forces spread across the entire Douling world. Even if Lin Feng didn't appear today, humans could still suddenly rise and amaze the world in the future. Then, do we still have a chance to obtain the thing that the Dream Whisper clan has? Shun hesitated and asked reluctantly. Lin Feng smiled, his eyes twinkling. Of course. Chapter 1624. Really, Shun was pleasantly surprised. When he saw the change in Lin Feng's expression and the change in his tone, he thought that it was impossible. He had only asked with a sliver of hope, but who would have thought that there really was a chance? Lin Feng nodded slightly and smiled. But the possibility isn't high. 30% at most. Maybe not even 20%, or maybe only 10%. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The spirit gathering formation is very useful to us humans. Even if there's only a sliver of chance, I won't give up. Spirit gathering formation? Shun was surprised. Lin Feng nodded and explained, it's a formation that can gather nearby spirit chi and greatly increase the area's spirit chi in a short period of time, thereby increasing one's cultivation speed. There are 3 known in the entire Douling world, and the Dream Whisper clan has one of them. Oh, Shun said softly, suddenly understanding. As a formation grandmaster, he had a lot of experience, so he knew what Lin Feng was talking about. However, the name Spirit Gathering Formation was the name of the starry sky world, and it wasn't recorded in the ancient books of humans. Shun nodded. So this is the Spirit Gathering Formation. The ancient clan has one. I only know that one Spirit Gathering Formation used to belong to the Sorcerer clan, but it was later obtained by the Heavenly Spirit clan. It should be the Dream Whisperer clan's formation. But where's the third one? It's in the Demon clan's forbidden area. Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and Shun was shocked. The Demon clan has one too? Shun was shocked. Lin Feng nodded. Not only do they have one, but the Demon Clan has a large-scale spirit gathering formation. Not only is its range greater than the Dream Whisperer clan and the Ancient Clan's small spirit gathering formations, but its value is more than 1,000 times greater. It's a truly priceless treasure. Shun took a deep breath and was shocked. In terms of talent, the Demon Clan is indeed better than us humans. However, in terms of aptitude, they are far inferior to humans. Their ability to reproduce is on par, or rather, humans are slightly inferior. But overall, the strength of humans is actually better than the Demon Clan. Lin Feng turned to Shun with a serious expression. Of course, the demon race was able to become the most powerful race in the Do spirit world partly because of favorable conditions, but a large part of the reason was due to the existence of the large-scale spirit gathering formation, which allowed the demon race to select super elites to nurture. This is also the true reason why the demon race has so many Holy Spirit stage and Holy King stage powerful beings. Shun was a little confused, but he couldn't react for a while. Could it be that this was the reason why the demon race was so powerful? Or rather, if humans had this large-scale spirit gathering array, wouldn't they be more powerful than the Demon Clan? Thinking of this, Shun couldn't help but blush, and his breathing became rapid. If he could see the rise of the human race in his lifetime, then he could die in peace. For the time being, we can't get the large-scale spirit gathering array, Lin Feng said frankly. Shun nodded slightly. This was on the table. Unless they fought to the death with the demon race. The demon race's forbidden area. What a joke. They couldn't even think about entering. But the spirit gathering array is so precious. The Dream Whisperer race must view it as an inheritance treasure. How could they give it up so easily? Shun frowned. He seemed to be talking to Lin Feng, but he also seemed to be muttering to himself. Moreover, with the Lulon Emperor watching, it's impossible for us to enter the Dream Whisperer race, even if we wanted to. Are we going to borrow it from the Dream Whisperer race? Would they be willing to? Shun kept thinking. For a moment, he was trapped in a circle and couldn't get out. Lin Feng looked at Shun and smiled. If the Dream Whisperer race wasn't in the Lulon Kingdom, there might be hope. But now, if we want to get the small-scale spirit gathering array from the Dream Whisperer race, the difficulty is almost as difficult as getting the large-scale spirit gathering array from the demon race. Shun was stunned. He couldn't understand. Then why did you say it was possible? Emperor Lin? Lin Feng looked at Shun. Their eyes met, and he said calmly, "It's very simple. Because the possibility, I said, is not the small-scale spirit gathering array of the Dream Whisperer race, but the ancient race." These two words fell directly into Shun's heart, startling him. The ancient race? The small-scale spirit gathering array of the ancient race? Shun was stunned. He hadn't even thought about it. How could he not know how important the spirit gathering array was to the ancient race? In the divine realm, it could be said to be a forbidden area for the demon race. You want the spirit gathering array? It would be strange if the ancient race didn't go all out. Shun kept shaking his head. Impossible. That's the lifeblood of the ancient race. In addition, the ancient race is arrogant by nature. Taking their things is the same as plucking the fur off a tiger. Taking the ancient race's treasures was difficult. Taking the ancient race's heirloom treasure was even more difficult. It was indeed impossible before. Lin Feng calmly replied, but times have changed. After the battle in the northeast and northwest ancient regions, the ancient race has fallen from the divine pedestal. They only have 50% of their strength left, and their combat power is even lower. Facing the demon race's encroachment, the ancient race will undoubtedly lose. Shun nodded. He was also clear about the current development of the situation. The demon race had led their troops south and marched straight in. They didn't care about the ancient race at all. First, they went to the northeast and northwest ancient regions. Now, they were going to take 3 ancient regions, including the divine realm, where the small-scale spirit gathering array was located. But even if the ancient race can't win, they can still take the spirit gathering array and leave first, Shun said hesitantly. Lin Feng shook his head. No, They can't take the spirit-gathering array away. Shun exclaimed softly and looked at Lin Feng doubtfully. He suddenly reacted and clapped his hands. Understand now. No wonder the wizard race couldn't protect the small-scale spirit-gathering array back then. In the end, it was obtained by Tianling. No wonder there are only 2 small-scale spirit-gathering arrays. Lin Feng smiled. The small-scale spirit-gathering array could be entered and used. It didn't mean that they could take it away or dismantle it. This was because the profoundness of this array was far beyond the power of the Douling world. It wasn't set up by the experts of the Douling world. According to Duo, if they wanted to take it away, they had to at least become a Starry Sky warrior first. The small-scale spirit-gathering array was even more precious than a heavenly treasure. Lin Feng, you're thinking of... Shun looked at Lin Feng's eyes. He seemed to understand Lin Feng's thoughts, but he was even more shocked. What a huge ambition. Taking advantage of the situation. Lin Feng's lips curled into a faint smile. It was mixed with a hint of mockery and coldness. Back then, he lowered his status in hopes of forming an alliance with the ancient race to fight against the demon race. However, he was rejected by the ancient race again and again. Even in the end, the ancient race refused to put down their dignity. They would rather protect their royal family's wings and their last bit of backbone. However, things are different now. The ancient race's defeat was equivalent to shattering their only hope of survival. It shattered like a mirror and no longer existed. The naked reality was placed in front of them. The strength of the demon race pressed down heavily on the ancient race. It was a strength that was enough to destroy their backbone and pride. Everyone could see that the ancient race could no longer fight. The wizard race losing the ancient race was like losing an arm, and the ancient race losing the wizard race was like losing both their legs. They were unable to fight against the demon race. The ancient race would definitely be defeated. There were only 2 possibilities. First, they would stubbornly resist and leave after leaving behind a large number of corpses. Second, they would endure hardships and retreat in the future to preserve their strength. They could either wait for another opportunity to rise or enter the wizard race to seek protection from the wizard race. However, no matter which possibility it would be a great humiliation to the ancient race. Most importantly, even if the demon race was defeated and left in the future, the ancient race would not be able to make a comeback and would completely fall. No race could prosper forever, not to mention that the ancient race had a major flaw. The ancient race's reproductive ability was too weak. This was the most fatal flaw for a race. However, they were not even willing to form an alliance. Now, they even want to give up the small-scale spirit-gathering array. Shun pursed his lips and felt that there was not much hope. That's why I said that the possibility is not high. A 30% chance is not bad. Lin Feng smiled and moved his fingers. A ray of light flashed in his eyes, and he clenched his fists. However, we can't put all our eggs in one basket. The ancient race's pedantic temperament is unpredictable. Perhaps they would rather die than submit. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. Do you still mind? Shun smiled. Lin Feng sighed. Not really. I just feel that it's a pity. In his heart, he did not want anything to happen to the ancient race. He did not want the ancient race to be defeated by the demon race and suffer heavy losses. After all, half of the ancient race's blood flowed in his body. He was also inextricably linked to the ancient race. His mother's bloodline, his grandfather, and even his wife, Huang Yin, were all ancient race and not humans. However, there were many things that he could not do as he wished. If the ancient race refused to put down their pride, what could he do? No matter what, the interests of the human race were his top priority. We're going to carry out the second plan. Lin Feng looked at Shun and said seriously, it's good if the ancient race is willing to compromise. If they're unwilling, there's no need to force them. After the demon race's army enters and occupies the divine realm, we'll immediately counterattack. I'm determined to get the small-scale spirit-gathering formation. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Shun, on the other hand, was startled. Counterattack the demon race. Did he hear wrongly? Emperor Lin was so bold that he wanted to counterattack the demon race. Although the small-scale spirit gathering formation was precious, wasn't the price to pay a little too high? That was the demon race, a giant that even the sorcerer race had to avoid. Even the ancient race was defeated and fled. Could the human race defeat the demon race? Their eyes met. Shun could not see any fear or recklessness in Lin Feng's eyes. Instead, there was fighting spirit and confidence. Inexplicably, his undulating chest gradually calmed down. This is not an impulsive decision. Lin Feng walked past Shun slowly and pointed at the map of the Douling world's inland. He said seriously, "Once the ancient race fails again and the divine realm is conquered, the ancient race will completely disappear from the demon race's sight. They will no longer be a threat. On the other hand, we humans will become the demon race's obstacle." Here, and here. Lin Feng pointed at the three regions with a serious expression. The demon race will definitely not bypass our three regions alone, so, when the time comes, a war will be unavoidable. Instead of passively defending, why don't we take advantage of the demon race's unstable situation and catch them off guard? We humans might not be afraid of the demon race. Lin Feng looked at the map with endless fighting spirit in his eyes. There was no way to avoid this battle. Chapter 1625. Full of ambition, Lin Feng's plan shocked all the experts in the southern region, including his father, Qian Lian Huang, Fong Ning, and the others. It wasn't that Lin Feng was smarter than them and knew how to seize the opportunity, but Lin Feng knew his own strength, the strength of humans, and the importance of small spirit gathering arrays. If humans entered a stable period in a few decades, the small spirit gathering arrays would have great effects, but they wouldn't be as effective as now. But now, once they obtained the small spirit gathering arrays, the strength of humans would soar in a short period of time. One had to know that humans had a divine weapon that neither the witch race nor the demon race had, and that was the astral treasure Qi. Every time a human expert advanced to the saint level, it meant that there were several divine beasts with immortal bodies. And once a saint king expert appeared, there would be many peak saint-level beasts. How could the increase in strength not be fast? In a war, those below the saint level were basically cannon fodder. The human wave tactic was indeed effective, but the ones with an overwhelming advantage were still the saint-level experts, saint king experts, and the peak combat power. Humans were limited in talent, and their individual combat power was not strong. Only Fong Ning, Wan Macho, and a few other experts could fight one-on-one with the demon race experts. But humans had the shield of truth. Although the existence of the heavenly treasure had not recovered, the cultivation in the shield of truth allowed the human experts to learn the art of combined attacks and the way of cooperation. Especially the divine beasts and ferocious beasts that controlled the astral treasure Qi, because they were all controlled by thoughts. Their cooperation was natural and unparalleled. In terms of combat power, the average combat power of a single human warrior was probably above that of the demon race, or even the witch race. Fight! Lin Feng didn't say too much, nor did he persuade them. Although the experts in the southern region didn't know why, their morale was still high and they weren't afraid at all. They knew how to repay kindness. The implementation of the God creation plan not only allowed the humans to have countless new experts, but it also allowed Lin Feng's reputation to reach the peak. He was the idol of all the new experts, Bo Le. One sentence from him could make all the experts of the human race throw their heads and shed blood for him. This was the charm of an emperor. Lin Feng was now the real emperor. However, things in the world were often unexpected. Previously, Lin Feng had thought that the aboriginals would lower their heads and form an alliance with the humans to fight the demon clan to the death. In the end, he had been given the cold shoulder, and his sincerity had gone down the drain. Now, Lin Feng had given up on forming an alliance with the aboriginals and was prepared for the worst. He had prepared for a big battle with the demon clan, but who knew? Yet the ancient race had arrived. Furthermore, it was a visit which was a show of sincerity. I trust you have been well since we last met, Brother Gu. Lin Feng smiled calmly and warmly welcomed the ancient gods. Lin Feng was a guest. Regardless of whether they had shed all pretenses of cordiality that day, he would not be so stingy. Moreover, an ancient god was an ancient god, and the temple master was the temple master. He and Gu Sheng had a good personal relationship, so he would not reject him. How could I be fine? Gu Sheng smiled bitterly. His face was pale. Lin Feng nodded slightly. He had heard about the battle that day. Gu Sheng was quite brave, but he was still defeated by the great sage. Although Gu Sheng's strength was not as strong as the witch Emperor Dijiang, it was not far off. From what he saw, his strength should be similar to that of the dark great sage. However, according to the report, there was still a considerable difference in strength between the two. Otherwise, Gu Sheng would not have lost so badly and almost died. Previously, he had some doubts, but today he saw it with his own eyes. Gu Sheng was indeed heavily injured. Is your father all right? Lin Feng asked. According to the report, the temple master Gu Zheng did not hesitate to sacrifice himself with the great sage in order to save Gu Sheng. However, he did not know the current situation. Gu Sheng frowned, and a tinge of sadness appeared in his eyes. He shook his head and said, "Not very well. My father used a forbidden technique to save me, and his vitality was greatly damaged. Although his life is not in danger, his injuries are very serious. He no longer has the ability to fight, and can't even handle the daily affairs of the temple. I will take over for the time being." Is that so? Lin Feng nodded lightly, and he immediately understood. If Gu Zheng was still the person in charge of Deity Hall, the ancient gods would not have come to visit him. Although Gu Zheng was not an evil person, he valued the dignity and pride of the ancient clan very much. He would rather die in battle than drag out an ignoble existence. In the eyes of the ancient clan, he was indeed unyielding, and his strength was enough to become the temple master. However, his disdain and contempt for humans was also deeply ingrained. To change his mind? Impossible. The strength of that demon clan commander is very scary. Gu Sheng's eyes revealed a tinge of fear and undetectable fear. He said in a low voice, "Previously, I fought side by side with the witch Emperor Dijiang, and I know his strength." Who knew? When I met him again, his strength was more than 10 times stronger than when I fought with the witch Emperor Dijiang. Gu Sheng gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. His eyes were bloodshot, and he did not hide his emotions. Lin Feng saw it and knew what was going on. This battle was a huge blow to Gu Sheng. Fear could be seen in his eyes. However, did the Dark Great Sage really become stronger? According to Gu Sheng, the Dark Great Sage's strength was obviously above the Witch Emperor Dijiang. Thinking of this, Lin Feng could not help but frown slightly. He took this seriously. Previously, he had also fought with the Dark Great Sage. His strength was even weaker than a great sage in his perfect state. For him to have such a huge breakthrough in such a short time, unless gray energy and that mysterious him, Lin Feng felt a chill in his heart. He felt a tinge of fear. Currently, the only thing he was afraid of in the Douling world was the unfathomable evil demon in the demon clan's forbidden grounds. He could not see through his strength at all. He did not even know if he was dead or alive. However, it was obvious that the gray energy was rampant now. He would not believe that this had nothing to do with him. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Brother Lin, you must be careful when you meet him in the future. Gu Sheng looked at Lin Feng, as if he was thinking of the battle with Lin Feng. He said hesitantly, "I'm not exaggerating, but I personally feel that Brother Lin's strength might be slightly inferior." After saying this, Gu Sheng smiled. "Of course, Brother Lin, I don't know how strong you really are. It's just a feeling." A feeling? Lin Feng smiled. With Gu Sheng's strength, he was close to the witch Emperor Dijiang. His feeling would not be wrong. When he sparred with him that day, his strength should be slightly higher than the witch Emperor Dijiang. Since the Dark Great Sage could easily defeat Gu Sheng, it was obvious that his strength was also higher than the witch Emperor Dijiang's level. His intuition was most likely correct. The Dark Great Sage might really be stronger than him. However, he was stronger than the previous him. Now, not only was his willpower stronger, his cultivation of the Panga technique had deepened, and even his understanding of the 7-inch fist had improved. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds, but it could not be compared to back then. Especially with the 7-inch fist, it could be said that he had unleashed the full power of the Panga technique. Who was stronger and who was weaker was still unknown. Thank you for your reminder, Brother Gu. Lin Feng smiled. The ancient gods had already taken their seats. Lin Feng looked around. Other than Gu Sheng, ancient god Metal Slaughter, Mother Earth, and ancient god Verdant would had also come. They did not look good, but their injuries were light. It was just that they had used up a lot of energy. I heard that ancient god Jing Yin and ancient god Whale Tun were also heavily injured, Lin Feng thought. The two of them were in charge of the northeast and northwest regions, respectively. They must have used all their strength in the previous battle. It was already good that they were only injured and did not die. As for ancient god Bird, he was disgusted with humans and nitpicked at Lin Feng. That day, he wanted to pick bones out of an egg. There were only 4 people, and it was obvious that Gu Sheng was the leader. When Lin Feng saw this, he understood in his heart. Back then, he had shown enough sincerity, but the ancient race had ignored him. Today, it seemed that the roles have been reversed. May I know why Brother Gu and the ancient gods have come? Lin Feng asked with a smile. The 3 ancient gods looked at each other with hesitation in their eyes. Finally, their gazes fell on Gu Sheng. Although the latter's face was pale, his voice was firm. To tell you the truth, Brother Lin, we have come to apologize for the previous unpleasantness. We hope that Brother Lin will let bygones be bygones. Secondly, the ancient race hopes that we can abandon our former enmity and form an alliance with the humans. We will advance and retreat together. Gu Sheng's words were firm, neither servile nor overbearing. There was complete silence. Lin Feng did not speak. Shun, Qianlian Huang, and the others also did not speak. Everyone, including the 3 ancient gods, focused their gazes on Lin Feng. They looked at his calm face, but they could not tell what he was thinking. The atmosphere seemed to reach an impasse. The ancient gods' expressions became more and more unsightly, but they were mentally prepared. After all, the way they had treated Lin Feng that day was still vivid in their minds. Although they had shamelessly come today, they had come for their only hope. They had completely given up on the sorcerer race. The humans were the last straw they could grasp. What does Brother Lin think? Gu Sheng spoke once more, his voice somewhat hoarse. Lin Feng smiled and stood up. The alliance is an important matter that needs to be discussed. There's no need to rush. Why don't you all stay in the southern region for a while? I will seriously consider the ancient race's proposal. As for the alliance, the humans still need to carefully study it. What? The ancient god's expressions immediately changed. This. Ancient god Azure Wood's face turned red. Human Emperor. The Mother Gaia grew anxious and stood up. Everyone, there is no need to speak any further. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent as he waved his hand to interrupt them. Shun, I'll have to trouble you to set up a banquet for my guests. Do not neglect them. Yes, Emperor Lin, Shun replied. The ancient gods wanted to speak again, but Gu Sheng's eyes flashed, and he nodded. Then we will disturb you. Brother Gu is too polite, Lin Feng replied with a faint smile. Their eyes met, and there was no need for words. To him, having a good relationship with Gu Sheng was one thing, but when it came to the interests of the race, personal feelings had to be put aside. The well-being of the human race came first. Chapter 16:26. It wasn't like giving them a taste of their own medicine. Lin Feng naturally wasn't a petty person. He remembered the grudge from that day so deeply. In fact, before the ancient race arrived, Lin Feng had already discussed with Shun, Thousand Love Emperor, and the others to discuss the details of the negotiation. In terms of negotiation skills, Shun and the others were much stronger than Lin Feng. Since the ancient race was anxious, they would be even more anxious. The more anxious they were, the easier it was for them to lose their composure. Under the pressure of the outside world, their bottom line would be broken bit by bit. This was the way of the king in negotiation. The poorer they were, the more they would be bullied. The more miserable they were, the more they would be suppressed. Since it was a negotiation, it was equivalent to a battle. This was another battlefield. There was no mercy, only a game of chess. The loser would give up more land and space, while the winner would obtain more. On the first day, the ancient race experts were still calm. On the third day, the ancient race experts couldn't hold back and began to send people to inquire. On the fifth day, the seventh day, the ninth day, in the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. The ancient gods were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Even Gu Sheng, who had been calm previously, began to feel nervous. This was the first time he had come personally. The reason was simple. After a short period of rest and adjustment, the demon race had split into 3 groups and was officially marching towards the 3 great ancient regions. The ancient race's crisis was imminent. They're finally here. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. I didn't expect the demon race to only send out their troops on the 10th day. Shun smiled. He was confident. The ancient race's first line of defense has already collapsed. Thousand Love Emperor's eyes flickered. Lin Feng nodded slightly. To the ancient race, the demon race's second attack was equivalent to forcing them into a desperate situation. The countdown to the 3 great ancient regions had officially entered. Facing the powerful demon race, the ancient race was powerless. It was either hitting a rock with an egg or reluctantly giving up on the 3 great ancient regions. No matter which option it was, the ancient race couldn't accept it. We can officially state our conditions. Shun's eyes flickered. Thousand Love Emperor nodded. If we had made this request at the beginning, the ancient race would have turned hostile and left immediately. There would have been no room for reconciliation. Time was the best key. To the ancient race, a spirit-gathering array was their greatest treasure. As for the divine realm, where the spirit-gathering array was located, it was the forbidden land of the ancient race, the foundation of the ancient race. Most importantly, the small spirit-gathering array could not be dismantled. If Lin Feng wanted to obtain the small spirit-gathering array, it would mean that at the very least, the divine realm would have to open its doors. However, this was not enough. What Lin Feng wanted was the entire divine realm. The greater one's strength, the greater one's ambition. As long as there was a small spirit-gathering array, it would be the same as entering and exiting the ancient race's forbidden grounds. As time passed, it would be too eye-catching and would cause both sides to be unhappy. The alliance might have a tacit understanding in the beginning, but when the time came, the divine realm would become a point of friction between the 2 sides. Of course, Lin Feng also had some selfish motives. The Pangu staircase was an existence that was not inferior to a small-scale spirit-gathering array. Since he was already prepared to raise such harsh conditions, he might as well raise them even more harshly and decisively. What? Gu Sheng's expression changed drastically. As he looked at Lin Feng, shock and disbelief appeared on his face. Although he expected Lin Feng's request to be very high, he did not expect it to be so high. Gu Sheng pursed his lips tightly and did not say a word. His expression was extremely ugly. However, he could not blame Lin Feng. That day, the ancient race was at fault. Even when the ancient race opposed the alliance, he did not show up. Today, the ancient race had a request to ask of Lin Feng. It was natural for him to raise such a request. However, he did not expect that Lin Feng's ambition was so great. The entire ancient realm. Brother Lin, you're making things difficult for me. Gu Sheng clenched his teeth tightly. He was faintly angry, but he had no way to vent it. Was this still considered an alliance? It was simply robbery. Moreover, he was robbing the ancient race's foundation. Lin Feng smiled faintly and did not take it to heart. If they could reach an agreement the first time they met, it meant that his request was too simple. This is the result of the discussion between the upper echelons of the human race. I am sorry, Brother Gu. Although I am the human emperor, I am not in charge of internal and external affairs. I hope you can forgive me. His words were both firm and soft, causing Gu Sheng to swallow his words. How could Lin Feng not make a decision? As long as he said something, the upper echelons of the human race would only listen. Lin Feng's position in the human race was exactly the same as Shaman Emperor Dijon's position in the shaman race. However, since Lin Feng said so, Gu Sheng could only believe him. He had no other choice. Who asked the ancient race to be the weaker party? Who asked them to give up such a great opportunity? Sometimes, if an opportunity was missed, there would be no more. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he said slowly, Brother Gu, if you find it hard to accept, why don't we forget about it? Taking a step back in order to advance was pointlessly forcing the ancient race. This would have the opposite effect. Gu Sheng's expression was ugly as he said softly, I can't make a decision on this matter. After I go back and discuss with my teachers, I will give Brother Lin an answer. After he finished speaking, he did not wait for Lin Feng to reply and left in a huff. Gu Sheng had a stomach full of anger and had no way to vent it. Looking at Gu Sheng's back, Lin Feng smiled faintly. Gu Sheng's reaction was much better than he had imagined. At least, he did not fly into a rage. His current reaction meant that there was still hope. As expected, Gu Sheng and the other ancient gods came looking for him the next day. However, Lin Feng only saw Gu Sheng. After the first round of negotiations, both parties had a rough idea of what was going on. They started to test each other's bottom line. Such a clash was expected. There would not be any results, but it was good news. It meant that the ancient race had the possibility of giving in. Furthermore, it was very likely, because the current situation was too disadvantageous for the ancient race. Of the 7 ancient gods, 2 were seriously injured, and only 4 were left to manage the situation. Ancient God Bing Yin had been abandoned. Without the Divine Hall Master Gu Zheng to rely on, no matter how much ancient God Bing Yin hated the humans, there was nothing he could do. Hence, he was not even willing to participate in this negotiation. Ancient God Jin Lu, Mother Earth, and ancient God Chang Mu were the representatives of the ancient gods. As for Gu Sheng, he represented his father, Gu Zheng. As the successor of the Divine Hall Master, he had the greatest authority. Indeed, Lin Feng was quite lucky. If Gu Zheng was not injured, how could Gu Sheng make the decision? Hearing Lin Feng's excessive request, he would probably fall out with him on the spot. To Gu Zheng, he would not lower his head even if his country was destroyed, let alone to the humans. The pride of the ancient race could not be lost. However, Gu Sheng was different from his father. He was more concerned about the safety of the ancient race and the continuation of the race. To a certain extent, Gu Sheng's views were similar to Lin Feng's. This was the difference between the older generation and the younger generation. There was a difference in personality and views. Gu Sheng's request was indeed excessive. However, Lin Feng believed that Gu Sheng would eventually accept it if he put himself in Gu Sheng's shoes. The deity plane would be conquered soon. At that time, it would belong to the demon race. It would be the same for the other 2 ancient regions. Since that was the case, why not give it to the humans? They cannot keep it anyway. However, this was more about their pride and dignity. It was a matter of whether they would lower their heads. Lin Feng was not in a hurry. This was because he believed that as the demon race army got closer to the deity plane, the chances of Gu Sheng agreeing would increase. He would not give in. At the same time, the southern region was the main force, and the other 8 ancient regions were supporting. The human army was gathering in an orderly manner, ready to fight the demon race at any time. This had been decided long ago. Regardless of whether the ancient race gave in or not, the battle with the demon race was inevitable. The only difference was, if they could form an alliance, the ancient race would be strengthened and the chances of success would be higher. If they could not form an alliance, although the chances were small, Lin Feng estimated that they had a 30% to 40% chance of winning the battle in the deity plane. Even if they could not win, they could at least make the demon race suffer. Gu Sheng's main body would then come out of seclusion and display his strongest combat power. He believed that his main body was definitely the strongest in the Douling world. A heaven god. A heaven god who had the ability to attack groups would be an extremely terrifying presence on the battlefield, especially when this heaven god's flames were endless. He would be equivalent to the Grim Reaper. Lin Feng had sufficient strength and was therefore very confident. 13th day, 15th day, 17th day. The demon race was approaching step by step. The ancient race was retreating step by step. The bottom line that he had always maintained was finally crossed. No matter how unwilling he was, no matter how painful it was, and no matter how much he was willing to lower his noble head, as if he was ceding territory for peace, for the fate of the Gu clan, and for the safety of the Gu clan, Gu Sheng would rather be a sinner for all eternity and make a decision that he was proud of. Give the deity plane to the humans. Believe me, you won't regret it. Lin Feng looked at Gu Sheng and said slowly, "Perhaps today, this decision is wrong. However, 100 years later, 1,000 years later, you will realize that this decision is the most correct one." Lin Feng smiled faintly. Because of this decision, the ancient race will not become slaves to the dead. Instead, they will continue to pass on for 10,000 years, 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years, and even longer. As long as there are humans, the bloodline of the ancient race will exist. Lin Feng promise. Lin Feng extended his hand. His eyes were filled with sincerity. "All right, I believe you." Gu Sheng also extended his hand and shook it. Although there was still some heartache in his eyes, he had accepted this outcome and fate. Instead of relying on the wizard race, it was better to form an alliance with the humans. At least, the ancient race would not become slaves to the dead. They would still have their dignity. "It's a pleasure working with you." Lin Feng smiled. "It's not a pleasure at all." Gu Sheng sighed and made his decision. He closed his eyes. There was no point in thinking about it now. "Is that so?" Lin Feng smiled faintly. "I believe you will be happy soon." Gu Sheng smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I wonder how Brother Gu's injuries are. Do you still have the strength to fight?" Lin Feng's eyes flashed slightly. The strength to fight. Gu Sheng spread his hands and shrugged. "I have less than 20% of my strength left. I can't spar with Brother Lin." Lin Feng shook his head. "It's not a spar. It's a battle." "A battle?" Gu Sheng was stunned. "Yes, a battle." Lin Feng stood up. His eyes flashed with a cold battle intent. He looked into the distance. "I don't mind telling you the truth. We humans have already gathered our forces and are ready to attack. We are waiting for the day the demon race breaks through the divine plane. I must obtain the divine plane. Now that we have ancient race experts with us, our chances of winning have increased by at least 1/3. 60%. I have 60% confidence that the demon race will return empty-handed." Lin Feng's eyes were filled with killing intent. His aura was stronger than Pang Rant's. However, Gu Sheng, who was behind him, widened his eyes. He was completely shocked. Chapter 16:27. 60% chance? Lin Feng did not make it sound high to reassure Gu Sheng. 1 was 1, 2 was 2. Lying was not necessarily a good thing, especially when it came to allies. Whether it was a donkey or a horse, they had to show it when the time came. It was not easy to win against the demon race. In fact, Lin Feng had lowered the 60% chance. If he were to say it in his heart, with the help of the ancient race, the human race's chance of winning would increase to more than 65%. The strength of the demon race was completely exposed in the last battle with the ancient race. In fact, the demon race was not afraid of being exposed at all. In their opinion, as long as they were powerful enough, they did not need to be afraid of the enemy's schemes. In war, victory and defeat were determined on the battlefield. In this aspect, the demon race was very confident, and they did have the capital to be arrogant and despotic. The first battle is the most crucial. It is also the battle with the highest chance of winning, Lin Feng thought to himself. The demon race's strength is divided into three, which is basically equal. We still need to hide some of our strength in this battle, so there's no need to go all out. However, a victory is still necessary. Not only will it increase the morale, but it will also restore the confidence of the ancient race. Conservatively speaking, the chance of winning this battle is more than 95%. Lin Feng was very confident. Indeed, if they could not even defeat 1/3 of the demon race's army, what right did the human race have to fight the demon race? Back then, Lin Feng was prepared to reap the benefits of the battle between the ancient race and the demon race. He was waiting for the end of the battle to seize the divine realm. In fact, even if the ancient race did not participate in the battle, Lin Feng was 80% confident of winning the battle in the divine realm. Of course, the ancient race's participation in the battle would increase the human race's strength significantly. Every ancient race expert was a natural-born heavenly god. In the battle, as long as they were protected, they would be able to unleash unimaginable power. However, this battle was nothing. It was only a warm-up. The next battle was the real deal. After the great defeat, the demon race would gather all their strength to take revenge. With the Dark Great Sage as the leader, they would attack the divine realm with all their strength. The outcome of the battle would determine the direction of the battle. 60 to 65%, or even 70%. This was the true standard of Lin Feng, and also the reason why he dared to start a war. Although the ancient race had come for the sake of forming an alliance, they had suffered great losses. Before the battle, they had already lost the divine domain. Among them, there was the Pangu staircase and a small spirit gathering formation. These two things were irreplaceable to the ancient tribe. However, in the face of the oppression and cruelty of reality, the ancient tribe had no choice but to give them up, just like how the shaman tribe had given up part of the spiritual chi in the shaman realm. Forced by the situation, in reality, the ancient race had no choice but to lower their heads. Otherwise, what awaited the ancient race would be a true nightmare. However, the news of losing the deity realm did not give the ancient race too much time to think. This was because the various ancient race clans had already received the battle order. They gathered their god realms and prepared to fight to the death with the monster race. I will never lose again. Despicable demons. I will kill them all to avenge my people. Fight to the death. There are no cowards in the ancient race. Even if he were to die, he would die standing with his head held high. Drag these demon bastards down with us. Their fighting spirit was extremely high. Their families were destroyed, and their people were killed. The oppression of the demon race had aroused the pride in the ancient race. At this moment, they were no longer dependent on the shaman tribe. They were truly the ancient race with an indomitable spirit. They were the proud ancient race, the descendants of the great god Pangu. Even if they had to fight to the death, they would not admit defeat. This was their belief. Even though the temple master, Gu Zheng, had fallen, Gu Sheng had stood up and led the ancient race again with his strength and identity. Although he had sold the deity realm, Gu Sheng had avoided the important and settled on the trivial. He had cleverly reduced the side effects of this news to a minimum. As a leader, these were the abilities that one had to possess. That was the ability to command. Just like Lin Feng now, perhaps his wisdom was not as good as Qianlian Huang's, and his experience was not as good as Shun's, but he was the undisputed leader of the human race. His personal charm was so strong that it could stimulate the human powerhouses to unleash their strongest combat power. Even when facing the tyrannical demon race, they were fearless and courageous. They would fight to the end. In the southern region. "How's it going, Shun?" Lin Feng asked with a smile. The closer they were to the war, the calmer and more spacious they felt in their hearts. Their strong willpower allowed them to face any danger calmly. "It's going smoothly. Thousands of teleportation channels have been established. We can allow the human powerhouses to enter the deity realm and participate in the war in a short period of time." Shun's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. The demon race would never have thought that we humans would help the ancient race in this war. When the time comes, they will definitely be shocked. That's not what I'm asking. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Shun was slightly stunned. Then he nodded. The handover of the deity realm went smoothly. The ancient race kept their promise. Even though the ancient gods were unwilling and angry, but it can be seen that Gu Shang's position in the ancient race is quite high. He handled this matter well and did not cause any chaos in the ancient race. That's good. Lin Feng nodded and felt relieved. This was the only thing he was worried about. He was afraid that the ancient race would become chaotic and the alliance would only exist in name. If the ancient race did not cooperate due to their anger or did not cooperate, it would be quite troublesome. However, it seemed that his worries were unnecessary. Gu Sheng handled this crisis very well. He avoided the important matters and downplayed them. He transferred the ancient race's anger to their hatred for the demon race. Shun sighed. The most outstanding batch of Star Sea level powerhouses on our side have entered the small-scale spirit gathering formation. The effect is indeed terrifying. In less than half a day, more than 100 Sage level powerhouses were born. At this rate, it will be terrifying. It's not the same. Lin Feng shook his head. This batch of Star Sea level powerhouses were born naturally. They are only one step away. The rate of Sage level powerhouses being born will be slower and slower. When the time comes, we will arrange for Sage level powerhouses to enter. Every Sage King level powerhouse will be more useful than 100 Sage level powerhouses. Of course, as long as we can defend the deity realm, the small-scale spirit gathering formation will be able to unleash its full potential. When the time comes, the rate of improvement will increase by a few levels. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. The application of the spirit gathering formation was still at the most basic level in the Douling world. In fact, the reason why the spirit gathering formation was called the spirit gathering formation was because of the word gathering. It could gather the surrounding spirit chi. Not only the spirit chi that originally existed, but also included every blade of grass, every tree, every human powerhouse, ancient race powerhouse, and even demon race powerhouse. How powerful was the power possessed by a Sage level powerhouse? A Sage King level powerhouse was even more powerful. The spirit gathering formation did not just gather spirit chi. The astral source energy was also spirit chi. It was the same for the power of heaven and earth. It was just that the spirit energy was much more powerful. Chapter 1628. 60% chance? It wasn't that Lin Feng wanted Gu Sheng to feel at ease. 1 was 1, and 2 was 2. It wasn't necessarily a good thing to lie about one's combat strength, especially when it came to allies. Regardless of whether it was a donkey or a horse, they had to show it off. It was not easy to win against the goblin race. In fact, Lin Feng was still understating the 60% chance. If he were to say it from the bottom of his heart, with the help of the ancient race, humanity's chance of winning would increase to more than 65%. The strength of the goblin race was completely exposed in the last battle with the ancient race. In fact, the goblin race was not afraid of being exposed at all. In their opinion, as long as they were strong enough, they did not need to be afraid of any schemes from their opponents. In the end, victory or defeat would be decided on the battlefield. In this aspect, the goblin race was very confident, and they did have the capital to be arrogant and despotic. The first battle is the most crucial. It is also the battle with the highest chance of winning. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The goblin race's strength is divided into 3, which is basically equal. We still need to hide some of our strength in this battle. There's no need to go all out. However, a victory is still necessary. Not only will it increase the morale of the ancient race, but it will also restore the confidence of the ancient race. Conservatively speaking, we have a 95% chance of winning this battle. If nothing goes wrong, we will win easily. Lin Feng was very confident. Indeed, if they could not even defeat 1/3 of the goblin race's strength, what right did humanity have to fight the goblin race? Back then, Lin Feng was prepared to take advantage of the situation and wait for the ancient race and the goblin race to end before forcefully seizing the godly realm. In fact, even if the ancient race did not participate in the battle, Lin Feng had an 80% chance of winning the battle in the godly realm. Of course, the ancient race's participation in the battle would increase the strength of humanity significantly. Every ancient race expert was a natural-born heavenly god. In the battle, as long as they were protected, the ancient race experts would be able to unleash unimaginable power. However, this battle was nothing. It could only be considered a warm-up. The next battle was the fundamental key. After the defeat, the goblin race would gather all their strength to take revenge. With the Dark Great Sage as the leader, they would attack the godly realm. The outcome of the battle would determine the direction of the battle. 60 to 65%, or even 70%. This was the true standard of Lin Feng, and also the reason why he dared to start a war. With the ancient race joining the alliance, humanity would be like a tiger that had grown wings. Although the ancient race had come for the sake of forming an alliance, they had suffered great losses. They had already lost the land of the gods before the battle had even started. There was also the Pangu staircase and a small spirit gathering formation. These two were irreplaceable treasures of the ancient race. However, due to the oppression and cruelty of reality, the ancient race had no choice but to give up on them, just like how the Magi had given up on part of the land of the spiritual Qi in the land of the Magi. Forced by the situation, in reality, the ancient race had no choice but to lower their heads. Otherwise, what awaited the ancient race would be a true nightmare. However, the news of losing the deity realm did not give the ancient race much time to think about it. This was because the various large clans of the ancient race had quickly received their battle orders. Gather in the god realm and fight to the death with the monster race. I will never lose again. Despicable demons. I will kill them all to avenge my people. Fight to the death. There are no cowards in the ancient race. Even if he were to die, he would die standing with his head held high. Drag these demon bastards down with us. Their fighting spirit was extremely high. With their families destroyed and their people dead, there was no way out. The oppression of the monster race had stimulated the pride in the hearts of the ancient race. At this moment, they were no longer a clan that relied on the witch race. Instead, they were the true ancient race that could support the heavens and the earth. They were the proud ancient race, the descendants of the great god Pangu. Even if they had to fight to the death, they would not admit defeat. This was their belief. Even though the temple master, Gu Zheng, had fallen, Gu Sheng had stood up and used his strength and identity to lead the ancient race again. Although he had sold the deity realm, Gu Sheng had avoided the important matters and settled on the trivial matters. His ingenious conversion had minimized the side effects of this news. As a leader, these were the abilities that one had to possess. That was the ability to command. Just like Lin Feng now. Perhaps his wisdom was not as good as Qianlian Huang's, and his experience was not as good as Shun's, but he was now the absolute leader of the human race. His personal charm was so strong that it allowed the human experts to unleash their strongest combat strength. Even when facing the tyrannical monster race, they were fearless and courageous. They would fight to the end. In the southern region. "How's it going, Shun?" Lin Feng asked with a smile. The closer it was to the war, the calmer and more spacious his heart became. His strong willpower allowed him to face any danger calmly. "It's going smoothly. Thousands of teleportation channels have been established. In a short period of time, the human experts can enter the deity realm and participate in the war." Shun's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. The monster race would never expect that we humans would help the ancient race in this war. When the time comes, they will definitely be shocked. That's not what I'm asking. Lin Feng's eyes were bright. Shun was slightly stunned. Then, he nodded in realization. The handover of the deity realm went smoothly. The ancient race has kept their promise. Even though the experts of the ancient race were somewhat unwilling and angry, but it seems that Gu Shang's position in the ancient race is quite high. This matter was handled well, and did not cause any chaos among the ancient race. That's good. Lin Feng nodded and felt relieved. This was his only worry. He was afraid of causing chaos among the ancient race and causing the alliance to exist in name only. If the ancient race did not cooperate due to their anger or did not cooperate, it would be quite troublesome. However, it seemed that his worries were unnecessary. Gu Sheng handled this crisis very cleverly. She avoided the important matters and focused on the trivial. She directly diverted the ancient race's anger to their hatred for the monster race. Shun sighed. The most outstanding batch of Star Sea experts on our side have entered the small-scale spirit gathering array. The effect is indeed terrifying. In less than half a day, more than 100 Saint experts were born. At this rate, it will be too scary. It's not the same. Lin Feng shook his head. This batch of Star Sea experts was formed naturally. Only the last step is left. The rate of Saint experts being born will be slower and slower. When the time comes, arrange for peak Saint Realm Masters to enter. Each Saint King Realm Master will be more useful than 100 Saint Realm Masters appearing at the same time. Of course, as long as we can defend the deity realm, the small-scale spirit gathering array's ability will be maximized. When the time comes, the rate of improvement will increase by several levels. Lin Feng's eyes were bright. The Douling world was still at the most basic level regarding the usage of the spirit gathering array. In fact, the reason why the spirit gathering array was called a spirit gathering array was because of the word gathering. It could gather the surrounding spirit chi. Not only the spirit chi that originally existed, but it also included every blade of grass, every tree, every human expert, ancient race expert, and even monster race expert. How powerful was the power possessed by a saint expert? Saint King experts were even more powerful. The spirit gathering array did not just gather spirit chi. The astral source energy was also spirit chi. It was the same for heaven and earth energy. It was just that the spirit energy was much stronger. When a war broke out outside the deity realm, the small-scale spirit gathering array would be able to feast. The abundant spirit chi would allow the human experts to become even stronger. This was an excellent cycle. Of course, the prerequisite was that the deity realm could not be breached. If the ancient race knew about the magical effect of the small-scale spirit gathering array, they would regret it. Shun laughed. It's useless even if they knew. Lin Feng shook his head and said slowly, they would not be able to defend the deity realm by themselves. They would only hand it over to the monster race. Moreover, the ancient race experts are extremely talented. The various ancient regions have extremely dense spirit chi absorption areas. The cultivation conditions are already sufficient. They do not rely on external factors, but on their own ability, perception, and so on. This was the difference between the ancient race and the humans. Of course, the aptitude of the humans was indeed inferior to the ancient race experts. However, this was the average difference. The human population was extremely terrifying. It was 10,000 times or even 100,000 times more than the ancient race. There would always be many outstanding elites. Once such elite experts appeared, the ancient race would immediately provide them with the best cultivation conditions and patiently nurture them. However, what about the humans? There were too many monks and too little gruel. Not to mention, the humans lived in places with thin spirit chi. Their cultivation conditions were already pitifully poor. There were a large number of human powerhouses who clearly had excellent perception and superior conditions, but their cultivation environment was extremely poor, which hindered their cultivation path. This was also the reason why the God creation plan was able to display such a powerful effect in the early stages, and the existence of the small spirit gathering array pushed the God creation plan to the peak. Sigh. Shun sighed softly. Now, I finally believe what you said, Emperor Lin. Actually, we humans are really not bad. Lin Feng nodded. All along, it had been external factors that hindered the development of the humans. Suppression, suppression, and suppression. This caused the humans to be in a state of semi-slavery. Generation after generation, the humans themselves subconsciously accepted this status as if they were brainwashed. According to the words of the Doling world, the humans were weak. Their aptitude and talent were weak. Apart from their ability to reproduce and scheming, what other advantages did they have? A lie said by one person was a lie. However, if 10,000 people said the same lie, then the lie could very well become true. Suddenly, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He looked into the distance. His expression changed, revealing a faint smile. Lin Feng turned to look at Shun. Shun, that's it. There's still 2 days. I will leave the preparation for the battle to you. Emperor Lin, you can rest assured. Shun said seriously. This matter concerns the survival of the human race. I will do my best. Then, I will take my leave first. After saying that, Shun cupped his hands and left. His eyes flashed with a fiery light. He was looking forward to the battle that was about to erupt, because this battle would be an epic battle in the history of the human race. Only Lin Feng was left in the huge palace. With a faint smile, he closed his eyes and said slowly, "Still not coming out?" Before he finished speaking, the wind and clouds surged in the palace. A terrifying pressure instantly descended. Boom! Chapter 16:29. Golden rays of light fell majestically. The extremely fast golden light, mixed with an unparalleled fighting spirit, instantly made Lin Feng's eyes light up, revealing a shocked expression. What shocked him was not the strength of the newcomer, but the power condensed by the golden light was not Star Source power, but the power of heaven and earth. It was the same power of heaven and earth as him. Lin Feng's expression changed, but his reaction was not slow at all. Panga tactic was instantly activated, and extremely tyrannical energy flowed through his meridians. The transformation of Lei Zhang's real body merged with the power of heaven and earth, causing his body to become abnormally strong, and the beast in his body seemed to be completely stimulated. Lei Zhang was a true ancient divine beast. It was born from the essence of heaven and earth, and its bloodline was purer than that of a divine beast. Now Lin Feng could exert 80% of the power of Lei Zhang's real body, which was already the limit. After all, Lin Feng was a human and not an ancient divine beast. There were still many requirements to fully exert the power of Lei Zhang. But 80% was already quite terrifying. One must know that Lin Feng had only relied on Lei Zhang's blood before, and the strength of his Star Source power was only 20% or 30%. Illusory spear. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and the power of heaven and earth condensed into a transparent spear in his hand. The pure power of heaven and earth could be said to be perfect, as if it was formed by nature. Originally, he could only barely use it, but now, with the rich power of heaven and earth and the improvement of the first level of Panga tactic, Lin Feng could not only easily use it, but also continuously use it. Compared to the World Destroyer Spear, each had its own advantages. Among them, the biggest advantage of the illusory spear was that it could perfectly combine with the power of heaven and earth, because it was formed by the power of heaven and earth. Pong! When the golden light collided, Lin Feng's right arm shook slightly. What strong power! Lin Feng was surprised, but he revealed a look of excitement. It was hard to find an opponent. The powerful recoil caused his body to retreat rapidly, but the golden shadow did not give up. Like a maggot attached to a bone, it attacked again, each wave stronger than the last. At this moment, the human figure behind the golden silhouette also appeared. He had a robust body, and his muscles were filled with explosive strength. Moreover, he had a pair of eyes that sparkled with battle intent. His fiery red eyes were filled with boundless battle intent. Good, Lin Feng shouted, sensing that this attack was even more powerful than the previous one, as well as an even richer explosion of heaven and earth energy. A smile appeared on his face. This kind of attack was truly worthy of being called an opponent. Chi! The illusory spear pierced out like a shooting star. There is only one word to describe it: fast. Lin Feng was not only fast, but the speed of his attacks was also extremely fast. The seemingly weightless illusory spear was able to display the word fast to the extreme. It was a simple spear, but it also contained the starry sky realm and Lin Feng's unique Tao of slaughter. In the Douling world, Lin Feng's attainments in spear arts were enough to be called Grandmaster. However, Grandmaster, rumble, rumble, the earth shook. The golden silhouette turned into a giant cudgel and fell down like a thunderbolt. The power of the cudgel formed hundreds of thousands of cudgel shadows. The mastery of the cudgel was even more profound than Lin Feng's spear arts. The figure with boundless battle intent appeared clearly, flashing with the power of heaven and earth. It was the great sage that had not been seen for a long time. He was not a demon commander, but a real great sage whose body had been taken away and only his soul was left. A new great sage who used the earth pillar as his body. Bang! The power of the cudgel directly shattered Lin Feng's spear forms. Lin Feng's expression was solemn, and his heart moved. Mystery mountain of golden scales. The transformation of the power of heaven and earth instantly formed a thick layer of armor on the surface of his body, enveloping Lei Zhang's true body. At the same time, it condensed into a sharp golden shield that blocked the cudgel shadows. At this moment, the cudgel shadows fell with earth-shattering momentum, rumbling loudly. Bang! 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 It was as if the pressure of mountains was pressing down on his shoulders. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and the defense of the mountain of golden scales quickly collapsed. However, the layers of cudgel shadows slowly dissipated like a fog. After shattering the illusory spear, 70% to 80% of his strength had been used. Lin Feng quickly understood. Indeed, the great sage's mastery of the cudgel was better than his, and his realm was impeccable. However, it was not that he did not have any advantages. In terms of the power of heaven and earth, the great sage was weaker than him. In terms of the fusion of the power of heaven and earth, the great sage was inferior to him. Therefore, the great sage's attack only barely broke through his defense and did not defeat him. Even without the defense of the mountain of golden scales, the great sage's remaining strength could only break through the defense of Lei Zhang's true body, causing him to suffer light injuries. However, after using the mountain of golden scales, the great sage's attack could not even break through his defense. Of course, this was already enough to shock him. One must know that not long ago, the great sage had only relied on the will and strength of his soul to fight against the spirit of the earth pillar. It could be said that it was like throwing an egg against a rock. If not for his help, no matter how strong his will was, no matter how much he persevered, only death would await him. However, he was moved by him, and by chance saved his life. He did not know before, but after experiencing the Panga's staircase, he understood that the great sage's strength was not the strength of his soul, but his willpower. Although he had not tested it, he believed that the great sage's willpower was stronger than his by at least one level, or even 2 or 3 levels. That day, when he could not find even the slightest chance of survival, the great sage had relied on his willpower to persevere until the moment he saved him. What kind of temperament, what kind of willpower? With such willpower, he had long predicted that the great sage would be able to rise again, but he did not think that it would be so fast. Now, the great sage already had the strength to fight against him, and even he was faintly suppressing him. This kind of strength, this kind of speed of improvement was breathtaking. However, it was only interesting to have such an opponent. Only then could one's fighting spirit be aroused, to catch up, to compete, to become stronger and stronger. Compared to Dugu Qiubai, Lin Feng preferred this kind of competition. He would improve, grow, and become stronger through competition. Again, Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and his will to fight surged. The power of heaven and earth exploded, and it was as if rays of light were exploding in his body. Lin Feng's will to fight was boundless. It was hard to find a strong opponent. Now, he had finally found one. However, smack. The golden light dimmed in an instant, and the surging will to fight also disappeared in the blink of an eye. Lin Feng's fighting spirit, which had just risen, was instantly extinguished, as if a basin of cold water had been poured over it. Looking at the figure standing in front of him, he frowned, extremely confused. I admit defeat. The great sage's eyes flashed, and his voice was calm. I wish everyone a happy new year. Chapter 1630. Admit defeat? Lin Feng couldn't help but be taken aback. The battle intent that had just risen was instantly extinguished, as if all the hot blood in his chest had disappeared in an instant. The great sage no longer had the will to fight. The powerful golden aura from before had also disappeared without a trace. A pair of flashing eyes stared straight at Lin Feng. His mountain-like body slowly descended, holding a giant golden staff in his hand. His steps were firm and powerful. His voice reverberated in the great hall, leisurely and uninterrupted. Oh! Lin Feng's eyes couldn't help but light up. Seeing the great sage again felt completely different from before. At that time, the great sage was like a tiger that had fallen from the sky. Although his willpower was firm, there was always a trace of dejection hidden in his expression. After all, the physical body that he relied on for survival had been taken away. It was a huge blow to the great sage. He once had the strongest body in the Douling world. All this time, the great sage had firmly believed in this point. He had even tempered his body, which he prided himself on, to an incomparably terrifying degree. Even if he was far inferior to which Emperor Jiang in other aspects, his abnormal physique had almost caught up to which Emperor Jiang's strength. After obtaining the Earth Pillar, the great sage's strength had even surpassed which Emperor Jiang's. But after that, everything had gone down the drain. If Lin Feng hadn't saved him, the great sage would have been devoured by the Earth Pillar's artifact spirit and destroyed in body and soul. But now, Lin Feng saw that the great sage had already recovered his former vigor. His arrogant and unruly eyes were filled with a dense, domineering aura, as if he was the only supreme existence in the world. The giant golden staff released a terrifying power, as if it could poke a hole in the sky. He had completely transformed. It was as if he was telling everyone that he, the great sage, had returned. You're not fighting anymore? Lin Feng looked at the great sage and asked helplessly. The great sage's eyes shone brightly as he spoke in a deep voice. You've already taken my strongest attack. There's no point in continuing this fight. Lin Feng looked closely at the great sage's body. Up close, he could clearly sense the surging aura of the great sage. However, the power was almost non-existent. Nodding, he said, Your energy of heaven and earth doesn't seem very strong. The great sage stopped and stood face to face with Lin Feng. Their eyes met, and he calmly extended 3 fingers. 3 moves. With my current power of heaven and earth, I can only perfectly execute 3 moves of the staff technique. Lin Feng nodded, just as he had expected. If not for the fact that the energy of heaven and earth was insufficient, with the great sage's personality, he would definitely not admit defeat so easily, even if it was just a spar. Even so, it was still shocking enough. At that time, the great sage could be said to have been beaten back to his original form. However, in a short period of time, the great sage already possessed such great power. This rate of improvement was simply frightening, if not for the fact that Yi Shiwen's strength had also increased by an astonishing amount. Let alone 3 moves, even 1 move, he might not even be able to dodge it. Your 3 moves, I'm afraid, could even defeat the witch Emperor Jiang of that day, Lin Feng said seriously. Even Yi Shiwen could barely block them. It was obvious how powerful the great sage's 3 moves were. Even though the great sage's use of the power of heaven and earth was crude, his staff technique was terrifying. They were both at the starry sky level, but Yi Shiwen's spear technique was 1 level lower than the great sage's staff technique. Fortunately, It was only one level lower. Otherwise, Yishuan might not even be able to fight back. I know. The great sage's eyes still had a hint of bestiality, but right now, he was strangely calm. He was completely different from his previous arrogant and domineering temperament. It was as if the baptism of the power of heaven and earth had given him a unique temperament that was hard to describe. But I'm still not as good as you. The great sage's voice was calm, but he didn't admit defeat. His flashing eyes stared straight at Lin Feng, filled with arrogance and fighting spirit. From his point of view, he hadn't really lost to Lin Feng. What he had lost to him was time. As long as he had enough time to absorb and refine the power of heaven and earth, he could use his advantage in staff techniques and battle experience to defeat Lin Feng. Different from the various types of opportunities and comprehension required, absorbing the power of heaven and earth only required one to be initiated. The rest was simple and direct absorption. There were no tricks. It seems you're not very willing. Lin Feng smiled and joked. The great sage's eyes shone brightly. He said, "Wait until I regain my physical body. Then we can fight again." Lin Feng was slightly stunned. He couldn't help but say happily, "So, you've come specifically for..." The great sage nodded. "To return a favor." Lin Feng laughed loudly. His eyes shone brightly. He was overjoyed. Just as he expected, the great sage didn't come any earlier or later. He chose to come now, for a reason. If the great sage had come purely to spar with Yi Shiwen, he wouldn't have chosen this time. After all, the great sage's power of heaven and earth had only just been initiated. He was like a child who was just learning to speak. The great sage had come to help Yi Shiwen. Of course, it was impossible for the great sage to not have any selfish motives. However, this was beneficial to both parties. The human side had gained another fierce general. Although the great sage only had the power of 3 perfect moves, that was against Yi Shiwen. Against ordinary sage kings, he could rely on his meager power of heaven and earth and his terrifying staff techniques to defeat them. Of course, using a great saint to deal with those ordinary saint king-level powerhouses was obviously a waste of talent. What did the humans need the most? The experts at the top of the pyramid. Other than Yi Shiwen, only Fong Ning and Wan Macho could barely fight against demon emperors. The others, including Little Jian, Qianlian Huang, and Shi Zhixin, had to rely on their cooperation to fight against demon emperors. Most importantly, even with the help of the ancient race had just suffered a great defeat. The ancient gods were all injured. Gu Sheng was even heavily injured. Furthermore, one-on-one battles weren't their forte. The addition of the great sage could be said to have leveled the scales to a certain extent. In fact, the humans were even stronger. 80%. This time, I have 80% confidence that the demons will return in defeat. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. This 80% was an absolute 80%. The great sage was a super expert comparable to which Emperor Jiang. With his addition, the humans would be like a tiger that had grown wings. However, "I have a request," the great sage suddenly said. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The great sage looked directly at Lin Feng, his eyes burning with extreme anger and hatred. He clenched the golden staff in his hands and gritted his teeth. "If I meet him, let me kill him myself." His veins were bulging. It was obvious how angry the great sage was. But it was also true. He had been schemed against and even had his body stolen. How could he not be angry? Not to mention, the great sage was extremely prideful. To him, this was an absolute humiliation. If he was a man, he would wash away this humiliation with his own hands. With his own hands. He would not let others do it. No problem. Lin Feng smiled and punched out with his right fist. Bang! The two fists collided. It was like the sound of metal clashing. The two great experts of the Douling world had established an alliance. Chapter 16:31. The Wild World, in a region shrouded in fog all year round. The clouds and mist emitted a terrifying poisonous gas. Ordinary martial artists would feel dizzy just by getting close to it, let alone entering it. At the deepest level, no one below the saint level could survive. The poison was so terrifying that it could be said to be the top of the Do Ling world. This was one of the most mysterious places in the Do Ling world. The headquarters of Extremity, Dual Polarity Palace. At this moment, the Dual Polarity Palace had been completely sealed off. The Great Formation at the bottom of the abyss had been activated, and there was no way to leave or enter. The person in charge of all of this was the Emperor of the Dual Polarity Palace. Emperor of Ji, Huang Jifu. Humans also want to fish in troubled waters? Naive. Foolish. Do you think you're a perfect match with the ancient race? Haha, you're just a bunch of mobs. The era of Pangu has already passed, and I, Tian Ling, am the true master of the Do Ling world in the future. I'll destroy the human race first, then the demon race. The time to lay low for many years has arrived. With the death of old geezer Dijiang, no one can stop me anymore. I, Huang Jifu, will conquer the world. The green-robed man, sitting on the throne on the high platform, exuded a terrifying aura, like a lion coiling its strength. His golden and silver horn shone with a piercing light. His body was sturdy and terrifying. A pair of Qilin arms with spiraling patterns wrapped around them clearly displayed his heaven-defying strength. He was once a genius, but now he had completely matured. He was an ambitious and ruthless person who was even more terrifying than the shaman Emperor Jiang. He had been dormant for many years, and finally, his ambitions had completely erupted. He was never willing to be lonely. There's a saying among humans, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Do humans want to be the mantis? Then I'm the oriole. Pass down the order. The experts of the North Pole Palace are to be on standby. The South Pole Palace will coordinate and properly train our Dual Polarity Palace's army. This time, I must let everyone remember the word Ji. It's fine if you don't make a sound, but you'll amaze everyone with a single brilliant feat. Tell the entire Do Ling world that I, Huang Jifu, am the true prodigy. With a thunderous roar, Huang Jifu stood upright. His terrifying aura spread across the entire abyss. The morale of the extreme experts beneath them was high, and their blood boiled as they shouted madly without end. Their spirits shot into the sky, and it seemed as if the sky was about to collapse. They had also waited for a long time. Extremity had never existed to earn mundane coins, nor was it some intelligence organization. It was merely a distraction. The elites of the heavenly spirit realm had gathered, and all of them had the same belief, obsession, and even bigotry. Born for war, born for their home. The Do spirit world belonged to them, not outsiders. They were the true masters of the Do spirit world, the southern region. Now, it had become the imperial region of the 9 great regions of the human race, and the Peach Garden was an existence equivalent to a holy land. In fact, the foundation of human powerhouses was undoubtedly in the southern region. Even if the other 8 regions were filled with talents, and the God-making plan had produced countless elite powerhouses, most of them were just starting. There were many Saint Realm powerhouses, but not a single Saint King Realm powerhouse had been born. The true combat power of the human race was still led by the southern region. Under Shun's guidance, a large number of human powerhouses entered the divine realm. This place that was once a holy land of the ancient race, a forbidden land, had now become the land of the humans. A deity domain was, after all, a deity domain. Disregarding everything else, just the restrictions on the deity domain itself was capable of concealing one's aura, making it impossible for others to detect what was inside. The demons had no way of knowing how many powerhouses there were in the divine realm, and this was very important to the humans. Intelligence was very important in war. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy could you win 100 battles. Lin Feng did not spread the news of the great sage joining the human camp. Only Shun, Qianlian Huang, and a few others knew about it. At this moment, the morale of the human camp was high, and there was no need to complicate matters. Shun had already arranged everything properly. Qian Lian Huang and Fong Ning became generals in the army, each leading a group. This is the battle to make the name of the human race known. We cannot lose. In order to protect our home, we will fight with the demons. With the cooperation of the ancient race, these demons will not be able to return. We will kill as many as they come. With Emperor Lin, we will definitely win. That's right. Emperor Lin is the undefeated emperor. Even the witch Emperor Jiang died in his hands. These demons are nothing. We still have the 5 great generals and countless astral treasure puppets. This battle will make the demons piss their pants. Ha ha! Why don't we have a bet on who can kill more demons? In the divine realm, there was a strong fighting spirit everywhere. Lin Feng wandered in the divine realm, listening to the voices of the human powerhouses. His only worry was also eliminated. He was most worried about whether this sudden battle would cause psychological pressure to the human powerhouses. But it was obvious that he worried too much. The newborn calf was not afraid of the tiger. He had made the right choice in carrying out the God creation plan. Even though the God creation plan had cost him a lot of money, it was already worth it to have such a powerful human army. Once upon a time, could the human ancestors imagine such a scene? Could they imagine that the humans had so many powerhouses and such high morale to fight against the demons? In the Great Witch War, the humans were always at the forefront, dying the fastest, the most innocent. They were cannon fodder, dregs, and dispensable existences. In the Doling world, the humans occupied the land left behind by the other races. And now, such a weak race had risen. They had finally risen. We will win. Lin Feng clenched his fist, his eyes burning with passion. Looking at the humans who shared the same blood as him, looking at the faith in their eyes, feeling the respect and reverence they had for him from the bottom of their hearts, there was a wave of heat in his heart. Lin Feng closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His heart was surging, but at this moment, it was extremely calm. The more dangerous it was, the more crucial it was, the calmer it was. He could not afford to be careless. Even if there were countless human powerhouses, even if there were great sages, the backbone of the human race was him. He was the strongest, and the flag of the human race was him. To defeat the demons, he was the most crucial, the most important chess piece. Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes flashed. With a thought, a fiery red figure appeared in front of him. A faint aura surrounded his body, and only a pair of bright eyes emitted a terrifying power. It was like the pressure of the heavens, and a pair of eyes could kill people. He wore an ordinary black martial attire, and his body was not very muscular. However, every inch of his muscles was perfect, as if they were sculpted. It would be a pity if there was more or less. Inside his body, there was a terrifying power of fire. The shining phoenix on his forehead seemed to have come alive as it soared and danced. "You're here." Lin Feng smiled gently. "I'm here." The man in the black martial attire smiled and replied. The two figures had different auras, but they had the same appearance. The main body had broken out of seclusion, and his strength had increased greatly. For this battle, Lin Feng had made sufficient preparations. Now, there were less than 4 hours left before the demon army came. The battle was about to start. Chapter 1632. An epic battle was about to begin. Riding on the momentum of their victory, the demon race did not take the ancient race seriously. In fact, the ancient race had suffered a great loss in the previous battle. They no longer had the strength to fight. The strongest Gusheng and Guzheng were defeated. The ancient gods were either severely injured or lightly injured. It could be said that they had suffered a crushing defeat. Most importantly, their morale plummeted. After conquering the northeast and northwest ancient regions, the demon race did not stop for long. To the ancient race, these two regions were extremely important. However, to the demon race, they were merely stepping stones. They continued to attack. The demon race was extremely ambitious. They were not afraid of any faction. Their strategy was to conquer the entire continent. They looked down on everything. The Bull Demon led an army to conquer the ancient eastern region. Demon King by Yunlei led an army to conquer the ancient western region. Blood Tiger King Kuei Tanyuan led an army to conquer the central region. The demon race's plan was not wrong. The ancient eastern region was the strongest, followed by the ancient western region, and the central region, which was the deity realm, was the weakest. After all, the deity realm was not the real territory of the ancient race. Although it was extremely important, it was more like a status symbol. Moreover, according to the demon race's intelligence, the ancient eastern region and western region were heavily guarded by the ancient race. However, the deity realm was extremely small. That was the deity realm, a forbidden land for the ancient race. Ordinary ancient race members were not allowed to enter. Moreover, in terms of importance, the ancient eastern region and western region, where the ancient race lived, were far more important than the deity realm. However, the demon race was not careless. Because of their carelessness, they had failed many times. The Blood Tiger King Kuei Tianyuan was ranked second among the 4 demon kings. He was accompanied by the demon King Qi Jin of the celestial dog race. With one as the leader and one as the vice leader, the demon race's overall strength was not inferior to the other 2 armies. They had invested a lot. The only question was, where did the demon race commander go? No one knew. Including the human army's intelligence network, Lin Feng did not receive any news in the deity realm. To the humans, the demon race commander was definitely a huge variable in the upcoming war. Whether he was present or not, the strength of the demon race's army would be completely different. It was just like the witch Emperor Jiang. However, at this moment, he couldn't care so much. This was because the demon clan was already at the city gates, and war was about to break out. Don't worry about it. I have a way to deal with it. Lin Feng's expression was full of confidence. Since the great sage didn't appear, then his side had to be hiding something as well. Using a real supreme saint to fight a fake supreme saint was an established strategy. Moreover, this battle in the divine realm was only a warm-up. Perhaps he could even hide his true body. The so-called trump card could only be called a trump card when no one knew about it. It was best not to expose himself if he could. Empress Qian Lian will be the commander, and King Yin will be the deputy commander of the left army. Fang Ning will be the commander, and Xiao Jian will be the deputy. They will lead the right army. I'll lead the army. Set off. Lin Feng shouted indifferently, his voice resounding through the clouds. There was no doubt or hesitation. This was a strategy that had been arranged long ago. If the enemy didn't change, they wouldn't change. After 2 days of careful consideration, this battle strength distribution was close to perfect. As long as there were no changes, the humans would obtain a true victory in this battle. Yes, Emperor Lin. The soldiers' morale was high. Using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Qi Huang snorted coldly. That's right. You want my Blood Tiger clan to attack this piece of land? How despicable. Kuei muttered. What divine realm? Pooh! If this desolate land can be called a divine realm, then isn't my demon clan's forbidden land the divine realm among the divine realms? Kuei laughed wildly, completely disregarding the divine realm. Indeed, the divine realms area was probably not even 1/10,000th of the ancient eastern region. It was pitifully small. If the demon clan's army invaded the divine realm, they would probably occupy it completely. One of them was the Blood Tiger clan, one of the demon clan's 4 royal clans. The other was the Celestial Dog clan, one of the 5 royal clans. They were naturally arrogant and disdained. In their opinion, attacking the ancient eastern region and ancient western region was exciting. That was the real battle. The demon clan was bloodthirsty. They were never afraid of war. This was because the demon clan had grown up in a world where the strong preyed on the weak. They thirsted for battle, for blood, and for their strength to obtain more. They lived by fighting. It seems like it's just a formality. Kuei Tianyuan smiled indifferently. Indeed, if I were an ancient, I would either gather my forces in one place or hide. In terms of defense, the ancient eastern region is the best place. The ancient western region is second. This divine realm. Qi Jin, the celestial dog clan's demon monarch, shook his head. It's so small and has no natural barriers. It's not the best place to defend. Let the other demon monarchs fight for their lives. Sitting back and reaping the fruits of their labor is exactly what I want. Kue Tinyuan's eyes flickered, but he remained calm. Qi Jin smiled. It seems like your clansmen don't think so. Kue Tianyuan sneered. They have different statuses and different perspectives. They still have too much bloodthirst in their bones, causing them to lose their cool. A centipede dies, but does not fall down. The ancient race is not a pushover. Although we won the previous battle, it was a Pyrrhic victory. However, everyone was immersed in the joy of victory and chose to forget it. Qi Jin frowned and nodded. Indeed, one of the 12 demon stars has fallen. The strength of the ancient gods of the ancient race cannot be underestimated. Kue Tinyuan's eyes shot out a beam of light. The king's symbol on his forehead shone abnormally, especially that Gu Sheng. He has such strength at such a young age. He will definitely become a great threat in the future. Just like that human Linfo. If we don't eliminate him soon, he will be a great disaster for the demon clan. Qi Jin laughed. Isn't the blood tiger monarch a little too exaggerated? I acknowledge Gu Sheng's strength, but that human Linfo. Ha! Qi Jin laughed and shook his head. He was disdainful of Lin Feng's name. What he heard might not be true. To him, what he saw was everything. However, there was a trace of cold, killing intent in that sneer. In terms of hatred, Qi Jin surpassed Kue Tianyuan. This was because Lin Feng's battle to rectify his name started from killing the Celestial Dog Clan. Qi Meng had died in Lin Feng's hands. Although Qi Meng was only a general in the Celestial Dog Clan, Qi Jin was extremely unhappy that someone else had stepped on him. Because of this, he had been mocked by the other demon kings a few times. Qi Wang, you must not be careless. Lin Feng, Kue Tianyuan said seriously. Suddenly, his expression changed. His eyes lit up as he looked into the distance and blurted out, "Impossible! Why would the ancient race set up their army in the divine region?" As powerful as Kue Tianyuan was, his senses were naturally very strong. He quickly discovered the enormous aura that was rapidly surging out of the divine region. Qi Jin was shocked. He did not expect the ancient race to divide their army into 3 to guard the divine region like the demon race. He immediately frowned and became serious. Regardless of whether the ancient race's vitality was greatly damaged, they could not be careless. If they were careless, the demon race's army would suffer heavy losses. Because they were the ancient race. This name represented the highest level of existence among the gods. In fact, if it were not for the fact that the ancient race had difficulties in reproduction, both the sorcerer race and the demon race would not be able to unleash the power of the ancient race in war. Even if there was only one ancient god left in the divine region, it would be a terrifying weapon of war. An ancient god who completely disregarded life and death and only wanted to severely injure the demon race's army. It would be very terrifying. The demon race had suffered many losses. Pass down the order. Get into formation and guard the place. The army is to disperse. Kue Tianyuan shouted. His eyes were stern. Although the demon race was not very intelligent, that was only for the ordinary demon race. The 4 great royal races with outstanding bloodlines were comparable to humans, the sorcerer race, and the ancient race. Especially the demon fox race of the 4 great royal races. Their intelligence was at the top of the pyramid in the Douling world. Kue Tianyuan was naturally not bad. Not only was his strength impressive, but his reaction on the battlefield was also extremely fast. Otherwise, he would not have become one of the marshals of the 3 armies. Among the 4 great kings of the demon race, his overall strength was second only to the Dragon Bull race's Niu Yunlei. In the face of an unexpected situation, his reaction was rather fast. Soon, Kuwait Tianyuan passed down the order, and the demon race's army quickly dispersed. The smarter demon race clearly knew the advantage of the ancient race's experts. Their ability to attack a group was rather outstanding. However, as the area covered by their group attack increased, their ability to attack a single point would be weaker. Furthermore, they would need to expend more astral source energy. Hence, this was the best way to deal with the ancient race. Exhaust them first, then surround them and sacrifice themselves. The top-notch experts charged at the front and pierced through the defenses of the ancient race's experts like a sword. When dealing with the ancient race, the advantage of numbers would not be apparent. They could only fight with strength. It had to be said that Kuei Tianyuan's reaction speed was very fast, very smart, and very decisive. However, he had made a mistake based on experience. Even though the large-scale AoE ability that had been released at the beginning of the war belonged to the Aboriginals, that did not mean that the main force in this war was the Aboriginals. That was merely a smokescreen, a strategy that gathered the intelligence of the humans and displayed a rather strong might at this moment. A strategy to confuse the enemy. Kill. Lin Feng took the lead. After the ancient race experts launched the first wave of attacks, he personally led the experts in the middle army and pierced forward like a sharp spear. Dao Feng, Xue Mu, Wu Tsong, and the others followed closely behind. There were no particularly strong experts in the middle army, but compared to the left and right armies, they were more terrifying. This was because they had Lin Feng and the Ancient Race Alliance. It was more than enough. Roar, rumble, countless godly beasts and ferocious beasts surged forward like waves. Facing the demon race's army that had completely scattered, they were like tigers that had entered a flock of sheep and started a crazy massacre. This was an overt scheme. The demon race army had no choice but to scatter. Otherwise, the ancient race experts would continue to launch powerful attacks and cause them to suffer heavy losses. Currently, the demon race's scattered formation was facing the charge of the elite experts. Their defensive power instantly collapsed. Swish! Lin Feng shot forward like a shooting star. Wherever he passed, the demon race experts were turned into nothingness. If humans blocked him, he would kill them. If demons blocked him, he would slay them. Chapter 1633. What? Kuei Tianyuan widened his eyes in shock. Qi Jin was stunned as well, and he didn't recover from his shock for a long time. He was confused by the news that came over. Not the ancient race, but the humans? What a joke. Did you really see clearly? It's the human army, not the ancient race army. Qi Jin's face was frosty as he gritted his teeth. Demon King, it's indeed the human army. Qi Jin knelt on one knee and cupped his hands. I recognize Lin Feng. It's this son of a bitch who killed Qi Ming. There are no ancient race experts in the Divine Dominion. It's just a feint. It's the human army that's fighting with us demons. Humans were fighting the demon army head-on? Aha! Qi Jin raised his head and laughed. His eyes were full of disdain. I thought it was the ancient race army lying in ambush here. It's just a human child. How can a firefly compete with the sun and moon? You overestimate yourself. Qi Jin's expression changed very quickly. Although he was caught off guard, the serious expression on his face disappeared when he heard that it was the human army and not the ancient race army that was lying in ambush. It's all right. Kuei Tianyuan nodded and felt relieved. To him and the demon race, the real trouble was the ancient race and not the humans. Although the humans had defeated the demon race before, it was just a coincidence. The strength of the demon race army back then was not much. Now, even if the demon race army was only 1/3 of its original strength, it was still 10 times stronger than before. Moreover, their real emperor, the demon race commander, had unfathomable strength. He was even stronger than which Emperor Jiang. How could the humans compete with the demon race? They were simply asking for humiliation. I was planning to destroy the humans after entering the Divine Dominion. I didn't expect them to come to me. It saves me some effort. Chi-Jin raised his head and said. His fighting spirit was radiating. His heavenly fire roared and was far stronger than Chi-Meng. They were not on the same level at all. Chi-Jin's attack power was not inferior to ordinary demon emperors. He was one of the top 10 super experts of the demon race. I'll leave it to you, Chi-Jin, Kuei Tianyuan said calmly. However, you must be careful. Humans have always been crafty and cunning. They might have set up traps or formations. If you fall into them, it will be troublesome. Also, there is a hidden human army in the God realm. There must be something fishy going on. Perhaps the ancient race and the humans have already joined forces. Kuei Tianyuan pondered for a moment before he slowly said, Blood Tiger Emperor, don't worry. Leave this battle to me. Qian laughed. His eyes were filled with arrogance. He had 100% confidence in defeating the humans. Without the sorcerer tribe, the aboriginals and humans will be nothing more than a motley crew. Even if there was an ancient god, Chi-Jin was still very confident in a one-on-one situation. He had originally thought that this battle would be peaceful and boring, but who would have thought that there would be something so interesting? Chi-Jin's lips curled into a sneer. He hadn't fought for a long time, and his bones were itching. To him, this was just like a game. It was as easy as blowing off dust. Moreover, he'd wanted to execute mortal Emperor Lin Feng since a long time ago. Now is the time. Emperor Lin? Heh, let me, Chi-Jin, fight you. Chi-Jin's body was covered in flames. The terrifying power caused the surrounding space to burn. Those flames were like the sky. On the battlefield, the strength of the Celestial Dog Clan was relatively terrifying. I want to see how powerful the legendary human genius of the Monster Clan is. Chi-Jin's voice was cold. He instantly rushed forward, full of confidence. He had 100% confidence in this battle. Behind the army, is there really no problem? I don't know, but from the looks of it, the humans seem very powerful. Indeed, the Monster Clan seems to be retreating. Strange, how can they be so weak? It's still early. The Monster Clan was just caught off guard. Coupled with the suppression of the ancient race experts, the human army has the absolute advantage. As the battle continues, the situation can change at any moment. Don't be happy too early. That's right. Who knows? It might be a burden to both sides. The ancient race experts were in the rear, discussing with each other. Many of their voices were sour. They did not participate in the battle. This was the plan they had decided on earlier. They were only responsible for the first round of attacks, to confuse the enemy. After that, the humans would have full authority. Even so, in order to express their intention to form an alliance, the ancient race still dispatched an ancient god. Ancient god Azurwood. This ancient god had always been wavering. Although he later participated in the alliance with the humans, he still had some reservations about them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Hovering high in the sky, ancient god Azurwood's observation of the battlefield far surpassed that of the other ancient race experts. At this moment, there was no doubt or seriousness in his eyes. Instead, there was some surprise or even shock. The humans were very powerful. Just as the other ancient race experts were discussing, the humans had the absolute advantage because of the suppression of the first round of attacks by the ancient race, as well as the strategy of confusing the enemy, causing the Monster Clan army to scatter. However, it was undeniable that the humans themselves were very powerful. Although there were not many Saint-level and Saint-King-level experts, the existence of the Astral treasure puppets made up for the human disadvantage in numbers. Even more frightening was that these summoned divine beasts and vicious beasts did not fear death. If one died, another would appear. Unless the human experts exhausted all their star origin energy, this terrifying beast army would be endless. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. This terrifying beast army belonging to the human army was crushing the Monster Clan army. Not only that, the left and right army's coordination is exquisite beyond compare. Ancient God Azurwood said to himself. Ancient God Azurwood said to himself, The human experts formed a small circle in groups of 3 or 4, allowing them to attack or retreat, reducing the casualties to a minimum. The army's advance and retreat were also coordinated, perfectly connecting with the central army as if there was an invisible string connecting them to each other. The monster clan could be said to have been slaughtered without the slightest ability to fight back. So powerful. Ancient god Azurwood sighed from the bottom of his heart. Although it was hard to believe, the facts were right in front of him, and he had no choice but to believe them. At this moment, his thoughts were extremely complicated. On one hand, he felt ashamed and unwilling to accept the fact that the humans were getting stronger and stronger, even surpassing the ancient race. On the other hand, he felt happy that the ancient race had such an alliance and was excited to see the monster clan suffer a major defeat. Pursing his lips, ancient god Azurwood looked up at the sky, his eyes filled with confusion. He could not see the situation clearly, much less the future of the ancient race. The only thing he could see was the strength of the humans and the rise of the humans. Perhaps my disciple's decision back then was correct, ancient god Azurwood said to himself, but he seemed to have aged even more. The era is slowly changing. The fittest will survive, and the unfit, they will be buried in the gears of time. Chapter 1634. The slaughter continued. Human and demon race experts were constantly losing their strength and sacrificing their lives. The entire battlefield was filled with the thick smell of blood, making ordinary warriors want to faint. Combined with the sky-piercing stench of the demons, this place was like purgatory, hell on earth. Chi, Chi! Lin Feng stabbed out like a spear. Like a god of war, the power of heaven and earth condensed into the world annihilation spear. Just the spear chi alone could crush warriors below the saint level. The consumption of power of heaven and earth was nothing to Lin Feng now. Panga Technique's first level had reached small success, and the recovery of power of heaven and earth was quite astonishing. Lin Feng was conserving his strength, but even if it was only 1% of his strength, it was enough to dominate this battlefield. Boom! The world annihilation spear danced, forming a huge area. Every demon expert in this space showed a shocked expression, trembling all over. That was a power they couldn't resist at all. It was like the pressure of heaven, the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Escape? Even a saint-level expert might not have this strength. Pong! The world annihilation spear fell, and the spear chi roared. With Lin Feng as the center, the entire area turned into nothingness. Thousands of demon experts were killed, and not even ashes were left. Lin Feng didn't even blink. To him, this was just a casual move, and his speed didn't even decrease by much. His gaze was cold and merciless. Given Lin Feng's strength, there was no need for him to worry about these ordinary demons. It would be easy for him to take the enemy's head. However, every time he killed a demon, it would mean fewer human cultivators would be sacrificed. For this reason, Lin Feng even gave up on physical attacks that didn't consume power of heaven and earth, and used it to launch a group attack. There were no wars without casualties. Even if humans had countless astral treasure puppets, there were too many demons. They covered the sky and earth, densely packed without any gaps. In a situation where they had the upper hand, humans were bleeding and sacrificing large amounts of blood every minute and second, let alone in a balanced situation. This was the cruelty of war. Unless we truly establish a situation where one race is the strongest, the war will continue until the victor is decided. Lin Feng felt a bit of pain in his heart. With his strength, he could sense almost the entire battlefield. Naturally, he could sense the disappearance of the auras of many human experts. They weren't doing it for their own benefit. They were sacrificing themselves for the future of mankind, for the freedom of mankind. They were true heroes, true men. These were only a small part of it. As the war progressed, more and more human experts would follow the demon experts to the Yellow Springs. Die! All of you die! Lin Feng shouted coldly, and the Doomsday Spear's ability, Doomsday Darkness, appeared. Lin Feng's aura was extremely violent, and the Doomsday Spear was like a scythe, reaping the lives of the demon race experts. With Lin Feng as the leader, the army was invincible. Suddenly, they're finally here. Lin Feng looked at a red dot in the distance, the corner of his mouth curling up into a cold smile. Sensing the enormous aura, he didn't panic or feel surprised. The identity of a newcomer was already clear. It was the vice marshal of the demon army, the demon king of the celestial dog race, Qi Jin. His strength and aura were second only to the blood tiger emperor, Kuei Tianyuan. A large fish was swimming over. Demon King? Lin Feng smiled, as though a lifetime had passed. The one he had the deepest relationship with wasn't the 4 great demon royal families, but the celestial dog race of the 5 great demon royal families. His journey to becoming the strongest in the Douling world could be said to have started from the Tianwu continent, from the little celestial dog. Back then, he was forced into a corner by a newborn celestial dog, and in the Douling world, he was forced to the brink of death by the celestial dog's parents. But today he was facing the strongest expert of the celestial dog race, Demon King, Qi Jin. Gratitude and grudges floated through his mind like smoke. These unforgettable experiences were the tempering of his growth. The more he was tempered, the stronger he became. Demon King Qi Jin? What was he? Peng. Lin Feng's aura exploded as he suddenly shouted. The power of heaven and earth erupted crazily, descending like clouds and thunder. All the surrounding demons were slaughtered, and in an instant, only the smell of blood remained. It was empty. His eyes flashed, and it was like the clouds had dispersed, revealing the sun at dawn. In front of him, there was a shocked face. Die. Lin Feng held the world annihilation spear, and his body turned into a stream of light, rushing toward Demon King Qi Jin. Although the flames in front of him were monstrous and could burn everything to ashes, Lin Feng didn't care at all, because he already had the strongest flame in the Douling world. Peak Saint King level heavenly flame? He didn't care at all. How is this possible? Qi Jin's expression changed, and he was a little stunned. The sea of fire formed by countless fire dragons was instantly torn open, and a black-clothed man, whose entire body seemed to be on fire, flew over like a meteor. Although his body was covered in flames, his speed was so fast that it made people speechless. Extreme speed. He was not affected at all. No. Qi Jin's face was red, and he suddenly roared. He crossed his claws, and the heavenly flame gathered in his claws, attacking Lin Feng explosively. He was hysterical, but the claw's attack contained profound Tao, and every arc was beautiful. Although he was a little surprised, Qi Jin's strength was still there, and his first attack was a Starry Sky level attack. In terms of attack power, Qi Jin was ranked in the top 5 of the demon race. He was very strong. However, that was only for other Saint King level powerhouses. Qi Jin's claws had just entered the Starry Sky level, and were on the same level as Lin Feng's spear. Even the staff technique of a great sage Lin Feng could withstand it, let alone claws of the same level. One had to know that the power of heaven and earth was strong enough to surpass star source energy of the same level. Break! Lin Feng raised his spear, and a trace was left behind. The thrust of the spear contained the Tao of the spear, and it had a destructive aura and endless killing intent. The power that belonged to Lin Feng collided with Qi Jin's power, and the winner was obvious. Clang! With this sound, the condensed power of heaven and earth directly broke through the claw's defense. Pung! Pung! There was an explosion, and the Doomsday Spear pierced through Qi Jin's right arm like a poisonous snake, shattering Qi Jin's arm and claws. What a terrifying power! What a terrifying Lin Feng! Roar! With an angry roar, Qi Jin's eyes turned red, and his blood boiled. Heavenly fire poured out continuously, forming a protective layer. His body retreated quickly, and the heavenly fire formed a fire dragon to attack Lin Feng, trying to stop Lin Feng's footsteps. At this moment, Qi Jin's eyes no longer held any contempt, only endless fear and terror. A person's name, a tree's shadow. At this moment, he finally understood why a human's name was passed down among the demon race. It was because of Lin Feng, too strong. Qi Jin had never seen a martial artist who could cultivate to such a level and seriously injure him in one move. Lin Feng's strength was like a mountain in his heart. Only the black figure and the ghostly power of the spear were left in front of him. Retreat. Qi Jin didn't have any second thoughts. He only wanted to retreat and preserve his life. He was indeed battle-hungry, but at least he could fight. The opponent he was facing now was far stronger than him. They weren't even on the same level. If he fought Lin Feng, only death awaited him. He might not even have the strength to resist. What did losing face matter? As long as he could preserve his life, he could rise again in the future. But how could everything go according to plan? They were on opposite sides. How could Lin Feng let him leave so easily? Could a mere heavenly fire stop Lin Feng? The answer was no. Boom! The power of the spear was earth-shattering. Lin Feng's figure appeared like a ghost, breaking through the fire dragon. Although there were flames left on his body, as if they were biting Lin Feng's body, Lin Feng didn't seem to feel any pain. His entire body was covered in flames, and his eyes flashed with killing intent. One man and one spear went straight for Qi Jin. Die Qi Jin. Lin Feng's voice was like a death god's decree. Facing such a terrifying enemy and this unstoppable pressure, Qi Jin's heart turned cold. He clearly knew that facing Lin Feng, who had extreme speed, he couldn't escape. Even if there were thousands of soldiers and horses around him, he was alone and powerless. Despair, even more despair. Despair reached the bottom of the valley. All that was left was anger and eruption. If you want me to die, then let's die together. Qi Jin went crazy. His entire body trembled violently. His body was on fire, and his blood was rapidly evaporating. The huge heavenly hound's body rapidly expanded. Its body instantly expanded by 100 times, and its blood vessels could be seen clearly. Qi Jin's face was full of anger. He opened his bloody mouth, raised his claw, and roared furiously. Heavenly hound swallows the sun. Qi Jin's blood filled the air as he went completely crazy. A terrifying suction force engulfed the entire area. Everything that existed was sucked into his body. It was like an endless black hole was crazily swallowing everything. Qi Jin's strength increased even more. He unleashed 150% of his strength and continued to soar. Even his scaly skin started to crack. However, he was shocked to find that Lin Feng wasn't moved at all. An invisible air current blocked in front of Lin Feng, fighting against the huge suction force. Lin Feng stood there like an old tree with roots. His expression was calm. When the difference in strength was too great, the Heavenly Hound's innate ability was useless. In fact, it would backfire. What Qi Jin used was a move that destroyed Jade and Common Stone. He calculated that the Heavenly Hound swallows the sun wouldn't be able to suck Lin Feng. However, he didn't expect that even with the secret technique, he couldn't hurt Lin Feng at all. 180%, 220%, 250%. Qi Jin roared crazily. His eyes were bloodshot. His body exploded inch by inch, leaving no one scathed. His huge body trembled violently, but the suction force continued to increase until 300%. Qi Jin used up all his strength and erupted with the last of his strength. The moment he closed his eyes, he seemed to see Lin Feng being sucked into the heavenly fire space. Qi Jin's lips curled into a gratified smile, as if he was happy that he succeeded before his death. However, in just an instant, he saw another Lin Feng. He was still standing there, looking at him quietly with an expressionless face. His vision became blurry, and his consciousness gradually blurred. Death. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.